My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. Notice: intellectual property theft is particularly egregious and equally unlawful where the sole inventor and creator of the intellectual property is the targeted individual. Erica Lorraine Spencer, subject to the unconstitutional and inhumane government system of gang stalking, otherwise referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices, because of which the intellectual property created by the targeted individual, who is, in fact, Erica Lorraine Spencer, as the intellectual property also proves, serves to establish via evidence and expose the existence of criminal surveillance and thus an inherent threat posed by the U.S. government and the civilian population sharing engagement in the unlawful system. Such evidence, that includes all of the content created by Erica Lorraine Spencer, images, videos, audio, etc., belongs solely and entirely to Erica Lorraine Spencer only and is necessarily published online in order to protect her life, safety, and liberty as the targeted individual, who is also the intellectual property owner, no less protected from theft procured through targeting by a public entity. Theft of any intellectual property belonging to Erica Lorraine Spencer, which is necessarily committed while she, being both creator and inventor, remains oppressed by the public entity via criminal surveillance, is a criminal and inhumane means of infringement under all circumstances and not protected nor enforceable pursuant to any invalid or fraudulent acts of copyright, trademarks, patents, etc., including as it pertains to any ideas associated with or generated from the intellectual property or the intellectual property owner, Erica Lorraine Spencer, whether creative, business, or otherwise, nor does the intellectual property owner consent to any such means of infringement and theft.
It is currently 6 a.m. It's September 16th, 2025. It's 6 a.m. And this is documentation regarding thorough notation of the government's engagement in what are obstruction of justice, because the government is essentially prosecuted for terrorism. And the government has essentially made history for all of the wrong reasons. And the government has accomplished that with the terrorists who are legally identified as the people of the state, and that includes company names. So in the same way that you are listening to, this is an entity that's speaking, yesterday afternoon inside of the OVITT Family Community Library. And if you are looking at the entirety of the documentation that I provide, you will also see this female who represents the state. She's a gang stalker. She's also a demon-possessed person. She's also the same entity full of homosexual women who are both obsessed with me and obsessed with my vagina, obsessed with consuming my bodily fluids. But as you can also hear in the audio of my podcast, you will also see this animosity and this seemingly aggressive desire to want to physically engage with me. And this is, again, of their own. This ongoing hostility is literally coming of it's of their own passion that they have toward me, to put it in that way. This is the demons that are obsessively stalking me that you hear engaging in what is also harassing. And they are speaking as the U.S. government. That's the government that's threatening to F me up inside of the OVITT Family Community Library. That's also the government that's monitoring as they are approaching that situation and stating that they will have the third party escorted. That's malice of the entity. It's all the pattern of conduct. And what needs to be understood is that that same entity, while it wants to, again, both murder, they want the entity, the demon-possessed population is both engaged in gang stalking you for the purpose of taking your life, and at the same time is sexually obsessed with you, is enamored with you, and sits around and is addicted to not only monitoring in the spirit, essentially staring at me in the spirit, studying in the spirit, psychopaths that are engaging in essentially what you would understand physically, things such as voyeurism, while obsessively stalking and violating in every way that their sick minds and imaginations can conjure up. This is an entity that's engaging in that violence, and they're doing it in the name of the U.S. government, and the government's going to be prosecuted, and that's why I capture every syllable of homosexual women who are stalking in the bathroom, every syllable of the entity that's engaging in what are means of harassment while they are being documented stalking me in furtherance of murder. I document every act of the entity that's not using words, but is using conduct such as stalking, obviously, using planes and helicopters and the police department in an environment where you're clearly targeting, like I'm capturing on video last night, with the engineered light, while demons, because only demons are engaging in reaching you with light while they're driving their cars, while you're inside of buildings, while you're outside, and you're being surrounded with that. And so I'm capturing that last night, and this is the entity that is also communicating a threat, not through words, but through its actions, and that's the United States government, okay? I want to go ahead and document the reason why I'm up so early documenting. Okay, that's amplified audible activity, and what the entity also engaging in communicating a threat while it is obsessed with me. The entity is full of psychopaths who have conspired to engage in murder, and that evidence of the purpose to engage in murder is this documentation, the P.O.C, which is the population that's currently engaged in what is stalking me as a population, the state full of co-conspirators of murder, doing so on behalf of and in concert with the United States government, which is what the Ontario Police Department represents. The demons that you hear in the background, squeaky brakes, I want to be clear, that's demonic. It is as impossible, meaning the entities engaged in what is manufactured noise, engineered light, a whole environment that is surrounding pursuant to what is monitoring, which demons are engaging in, and also while they are stalking necessarily in order to monitor me. They are doing so while they have all night maintained heavy traffic, which is surveillance. And with regard to the engineer light that I documented on video, which I've been captured, which is relevant to surveillance. And it needs to be noted that the terrorist that I'm going to identify both by company name and also by license plate, this is an entity that represents the United States government, and they are acting on behalf of the government that has already been prosecuted for domestic terrorism in the United States, and that's historic. This is terrorism and an unlawful threat to my life by, again, a hostile government that has been identified by name. People like Alex Escobar, who are harassing me and threatening my safety while he is stalking me in the women's restroom, while he is stalking me on Euclid Avenue in the middle of the night, while people like Jason Isaac Fields are hostile because he is a pedophile and because he's engaged in a long-term sexual relationship and committed and engaged in criminal activity, co-conspirating my murder with his fellow pedophile, Tracy Banks. And the demons that are gang stalking all night long are doing so while they're molesting with engineered light, with their obsession wanting to touch my body, while they're obsessively wanting to be in my presence stalking, and doing so as a population on behalf and in concert with the U.S. government that is engaged in what is terrorism, as it shall be prosecuted and identified and publicly exposed. This is an entity that's engaging in what is harassment. The U.S. government's engaged in harassment. The U.S. government's engaged in stalking. And the U.S. government's doing it in the name of demons like Sarah's Regis Group, okay? This is a third party headquartered in Newport Beach, and they've been engaged in sexual violence all night. They've been engaged in harassment all night. Sarah's Regis Group is engaged in terrorism in the city of Ontario via the downtown Ontario luxury apartments, where I'm documenting sexual violence on video. I'm documenting psychological torture on video, which that third party company that's engaged in surveillance throughout California is doing so under the guise of a company name. That's the entity that's doing so, while it is also threatening me, while the government that Sarah's Regis Group is is sharing in the conspiracy to commit murder by gang stalking as a company. The establishment itself, Sarah's Regis, is a gang stalker operating under the property of downtown Ontario luxury apartments, where the fake sun is remaining over me at that venue, where the Ontario International Airport is gang stalking me by hovering over that venue to engage in stalking me using commercial planes. Sarah's Regis Group is engaged in targeting with regard to the demons that are residing at that venue, engaging in the pattern of conduct, engaging in sexual violence, molesting with impossible light, doing so while they are all under a fake sun that remains for 12 hours in the day, in concert with the police that are engaging in criminal surveillance under the guise of being present on behalf of, at the behest of the people of the state, such as the residents of the downtown Ontario luxury apartments, where the entity engages in things such as, in other words, the food festival, where the police are engaged in nothing other than gang stalking. And this specific environment is the direct evidence of that. The entities engaging in this all night long, these are sex offenders and pedophiles. The entity that engages in sex with children, like Tracy Banks, are engaged in what is touching me in the middle of the night while I am asleep, and removing my blanket because they want to see my body. They want to see my person, while they engage in sick things like molesting me more with light. While they're doing so, while the entities engaged in what is inexplicable noise, inexplicable sensational activity, like what you're hearing is the brakes that were squeaking in the background. The entity is engaging in what is as impossible as a fake sun, as impossible as the engineered light coming from your headlights, moving across the curb on the opposite side of the street. Exhibit A. And I'm going to identify a plethora of defendants that are engaging in harassment with the United States government. The entity is engaging in what is extraordinarily amplified audible activity as a means of harassment, and that is evidence proven through the entity that is targeting me with impossible light. So in other words, the proof that the entity is engaging in much louder activity than that, doing so at all hours of the night based on pedophiles that are going to federal prison. And the U.S. government is very hostile and harassing through the population because of it. Sex offenders, murderers that are going to federal prison, people like Jason Isaac Fields and Tracy Banks, kidnappers like L. Edwards and Jason Knighton and Lester Keys, Jonathan Burnett, the entity that's engaged in what is kidnapping through third parties that are going to federal prison, like Ocean, that works at Starbucks. That's on the same street where a population's maintaining surveillance all night long and engaged in terrorism in demonic ways based on their demented mind state, where you're not engaged. The United States government is not engaged in ordinary harassment such as standing next to me and screaming at the top of their lungs. The entity is engaged in what is maintaining inexplicable rumbling noise in the middle of the parking lot. That's not coming from planes. That's not coming from anybody's exhaust from their vehicles. It's demonic. It's the entity that's filling the environment with noise pursuant to what is terrorism. This is not an ordinary level of harassment. It's satanic, and the U.S. government's being prosecuted while a demon-possessed population is engaged in surveillance, molesting my body, touching me overnight while I'm in an unconscious state, touching me with impossible light, engaging what is terrorism while amplified noise is surrounding my physical movement, which demon-possessed sex offenders who do have sex with children, who are violent sex offenders, who have committed sex acts as a department. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, they're pedophiles. The Ontario Police Department, they're pedophiles. The sex offender that includes Paul Leon, he's documented while the population is engaged in sexual violence all night long, going to the extent of wanting to touch me, to remove covering of my body so that sex offenders can stare at me while they stalk and touch with light. This is the entity that's engaging in that all night long. And I want to be clear, I've documented many. This is the entity that has no problem with you knowing that they're stalking with planes and helicopters as well. This is the entity that's going to be prosecuted as a government, as an entity, as a terrorist and a sex offender, as a company such as Sarah's Regis. Sarah's Regis is a sex offender. Sarah's Regis is engaged in terrorism, and Sarah's Regis is engaged in pedophilia while that gang stalking system is happening under the name of Sarah's Regis, in relevant position where the government cannot keep me under surveillance but for the presence of that establishment where the fake sun remains over the demons living at downtown Ontario luxury apartments, the demons that are entering and exiting the venue of the downtown Ontario luxury apartments, where the demons are engaged in surveillance around the venue of the downtown Ontario luxury apartments, where the demons are hovering and stalking over that venue using commercial planes and helicopters to terrorize me while the entities maintaining inexplicable ongoing, like a dinosaur is roaring in the middle of the parking lot. That's what the entity is doing, and this is what the entity has been doing all night. And this is pursuant to what is their obsession. The serial killers, the psychopaths, and the pedophiles, their obsession is me. And they are both hostile and aggressive with regard to wanting to inflict physical pain and also wanting to sexually violate against my will, doing so both in a conscious and in an unconscious state, doing so in ways that are also supernatural because they are demons engaging in and inflicting acts of terrorism and not ordinary levels of harassment. The entity is doing so while surveillance is underway at Euclid Avenue, at 415 North Euclid Avenue. And I want to document again the people of the state engaged in what is harassment as a community, as a city, as a county, as a police station, as a fire station, as a mayor's office, as the third party Tracy Banks is engaged in ongoing psychological torture and terrorism and sexual violence. She is indeed a pedophile, the same community of sex offenders that's being prosecuted. She's going to federal prison, and she's engaged in the ongoing all-night campaign of sexual violence and harassment by a group of demons that know that they're going to federal prison. The United States government is anticipating things like being raided. The United States government is anticipating things like being charged and being prosecuted in court. The United States government is anticipating things like being removed altogether from existence, i.e. the disbanding of the Ontario Police. The United States government is anticipating things like federal prison. This is what Jason Isaac Fields is both hostile about, and he's also acting via a population that is targeting me together, including through impossible light, including through amplified noise, impossible noise maintenance, while the demon possessed are targeting. And that's relevant to the entity that I'm going to document. The entity is acting as one, and there are many that are documented on the record, and they need to be specifically recited based on their criminal acts of terrorism committed all night long as an entity, as a community of sex offenders that are together. Remember, when a gang stalker rapes you, the government raped you. When a gang stalker puts you on the internet and against your knowledge and against your will, violating your privacy and doing so, the government is engaged in sex trafficking you. And this is that same entity that's done so as an entity. And on behalf of Tracy Banks, on behalf of Jason Isaac Fields, on behalf of Eric Spencer, on behalf of Tommy Allen Banks, these are pedophiles, these are sex offenders, these are demons that are going to prison. They're going to federal prison for engaging in what is targeting, and they are one entity. And in the same way that the demon-possessed gang stalkers that are gang stalking on Euclid Avenue, doing so all night, never is any of their vehicles going to create what is rumbling, amplified noise. Not even your motorcycle, that's a demon. There are no dinosaurs that are on Lemon Avenue roaring in the middle of the parking lot. That's amplified noise. These are demon-possessed gang stalkers engaging in what is not ordinary harassment. This is terrorism by psychopaths who are demon-possessed, and that's the United States government's criminal pattern of conduct. And the entity's been doing it all night as a criminal act of obstruction of justice based on its impending prosecution as a terrorist in the United States. And the government is doing so with knowledge that it is anticipating that. And in the same way that the United States government has initiated co-conspirators to commit murder, those that have initiated criminal acts against me, such as defrauding me, stealing my identity, taking out loans in my name, and I've never met them. This is the United States government's criminal activity. The demons that are gang stalking me that I'm documenting, a population of strangers that are targeting, knowing exactly who I am and who are also obsessed with my vagina. They are engaged in targeting, such as engaging in criminal activity and doing so in order to set me up in the same way that the gang stalkers are crossing path on Euclid Avenue. This is the same population that's committed such criminal acts in my name and targeting me in doing so. This is the entity that's engaging in violence and terrorism as one as well. So it is the shared conduct of the entity, and that's irrelevant to the fake sun that remains over me, while the population of demon-possessed psychopaths and violent sex offenders who do have sex with children, they do have sex with people against their will. They do utilize witchcraft in order to accomplish sex acts and to get away with it. And they engage in witchcraft such as gang stalking in order to do away with criminal activity that, by the way, the United States government has committed with the people of the state. They're engaged in criminal activity in the name of the government. They're engaged in criminal activity in concert with the government. They're engaged in criminal activity in the name and in concert with the government in order to get away with criminal activity that same entity has committed. And this is what Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields are going to federal prison for. But this is the entity that's acting pursuant to what is an entity. As you document, the entity is the one that's stalking me in the bathroom and communicating as an entity its hostility and its desire to physically harm me, when at the same time they are cowards. This is why they shine light on the opposite side of the street and run away. This is why when they're all stalking at the red light, the entity immediately turns the light green so that I can't get their license plate. This is the entity that engages in what is hiding behind but it's not hiding, because the United States government is going to be prosecuted for terrorism. But it's hiding in the sense that the entity's maintaining ongoing just amplified noise in the middle of the parking lot, and the entity's doing so when you're not identifying a specific person. You're identifying the U.S. government. The government that's being disbanded, the Ontario Police Department. The government that's being removed from position, the Ontario International Airport. The government that's being prosecuted, every household. The city of Ontario is full of sex offenders and domestic terrorists. The entire city is engaged in that, including as I document the specific environment where the city of Ontario is targeting on behalf of the U.S. government. And doing so, including at nightfall, where I prove, again, the maintenance of impossible light activity, where a population of sex offenders and pedophiles and murderers who have engaged in murdering plenty of people before I exposed it, and before I also exposed what is the practice of witchcraft that is simultaneously coexisting with what is an ongoing campaign of terrorism by a population, and altogether they are demons that engage in stalking in bathrooms, and they also do this to children. Okay, this is an entity that's engaging in that, and this is representing what is the mental illness that fills the population. All right, and so I want to make sure that this is understood. I'm going to document the people of the state. These are demons that have been engaged in stalking all night long, going to the extent of removing. This is going to the extent of touching my person. This is how obsessed and psychopathic and also hostile terrorists and sex offenders are. This is how angry the Ontario Police Department is. The entity removing my blanket off of me so that they can see my body. And all they're doing is shining, just like you saw on video. So while I'm asleep, a bunch of demons are monitoring me, pacing all night long. They're stalking me while I'm sleeping outside. And these are demons that are satiated in a very sick and demented manner because they're all stalking. But they're also engaged in what is removing the blanket while you're waking up and someone is obviously touching you and violating your person, so that they can see you while they stalk you, so that they can see you while they touch you with impossible light, so that they can see you while they're standing around and sitting around staring at you. These are the sex offenders engaging in that. And it does include Tracy Banks. It includes the entirety of the Ontario Police Department, the entirety of the city of Ontario, including Paul Leon. It includes the city of the state of California. This is criminal conduct that Gavin Newsom is engaging in as an entity. Okay, this is the state. So I want to make sure that I'm documenting specifically that entity, and it includes company names that are every company in California, but I'm going to document the entity that's maintaining relevant position while the demon-possessed are engaged in surveillance all night long, centered and concentrated around me while they're engaging in surveillance. This is, again, the entity that's being prosecuted for the conspiracy that it engages in together to not only terrorize in order to psychologically torture and ultimately murder, but also sexually violate, and as I'm documenting, stalk all night long. Okay, stalk to the point of what is wanting to touch on me, which is the sex offender that's engaged in its ongoing obsession, at the same time hostile with me. Okay, this includes third party 6MYK268. This is including the sex offender Jason Isaac Fields, and he is rightfully going to federal prison. This is a maniacal psychopath that's operating through a whole population of demons that are on his behalf, targeting and sexually violating and terrorizing with impossible light and amplified audible noise, while they are satiated with, again, psychopaths that are pleasured by inflicting harm to another. That's Jason Isaac Fields, and the entity is acting on behalf of Jason Isaac Fields, and this is what he intended when he is engaged in defaming my character as an entity, speaking in manners in ways that apply to him. He's the pedophile. He's the one that's HIV infected. He's the one that's committed criminal activity and tried to frame me for it. And so are the demons that are gang stalking on the roads and the highways while I'm sleeping outside, which is this entity's fault. This is Jason Isaac Fields' fault, and they're going to prison for it. They're being prosecuted as an entity for it. They're being deported from the United States for it. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. And this is an entity acting with impunity, and they deserve all of the above based on what I'm going to document and identify. Okay, they are an entity acting ceaselessly, and there is no point where you are removed from that entity. Okay, license 6MYK268, like I stated, license 9PZJ600. And I want to be clear as I'm documenting, this is an entity that is stalking and is ceaselessly stalking even right now. None of this is traffic. This is where the fake sun rises. This is where the demons are stalking with impossible light. This is where you can hear the demons maintaining amplified noise as though a dinosaur, a T-Rex, is roaring in the sky space. This is where they are stalking with real time, and this is why they're being deported, going to federal prison, being disbanded, being removed as companies, being removed as venues altogether, while domestic terrorism is serving to expose what are acts of murder and organized crime committed by the United States government in the United States, and also serving to target terrorists. They are in real time still engaging in that, which I've documented as a body of evidence. Everything that you're hearing traffic, the terrorists, the stalkers are still gang stalking. This is, again, the entity that has to be put in prison, that has to be disbanded, that has to be deported, that has to be removed from existence, because they will not stop until, and that's relevant to their mental illness, which you see proof of while they're stalking me under a fake sun and stalking with impossible light and stalking with noise, which no sane person is doing. That is the maniacal psychopath showing outwardly that it's a maniacal psychopath and no longer presenting as one that wants to deceive the masses as though it's a normal person engaging what is minding its business or conducting business. The business is the vagina of Erica Spencer. The business is everything that she's doing, including while I am asleep. And the demon-possessed psychopaths who you hear using a truck as a means of audible activity at ARCO, at ARCO, that's gang stalking, is engaging in what is sexual violence, touching me in the middle of the night, because that's how obsessed that ARCO is, as ARCO is acting as an entity. This is giving, again, the personification of that demon-possessed gang stalker a name. And it is going by ARCO, that is headquartered in Los Angeles, La Palma, to be specific. And ARCO, it's not a surprise because Los Angeles is a demon-possessed gang stalker, okay? I documented the entity, LAPD, I documented the entity stalking, and ARCO is headquartered in LA, and the domestic terrorism that ARCO is engaged in is not a surprise, with that being the reality. This is P.O.C. Everything that you're hearing in the background is pursuant to the entity that I'm identifying, ceaselessly engaging in that sexual violence, that psychological torture, that criminal activity targeting me in furtherance of murdering me. And it is going by company names like ARCO and Ceres Regis Group. All right, license 9PZJ600, 6RGD348, 8PUW162, 9DJD465, 8UTY159, 4C29351, 8UUV622. And I just want to be clear, dangerous psychopaths who are serial killers, and you don't understand that you have serial killers that you're putting in office when you're voting for them. The entities engaged in terrorizing American citizens by targeting them and maintaining a system of surveillance that you're ignorant about. This is what Gavin Newsom has not told you. And he is actually engaged in and in a position of what is a serial killer, while American citizens are targeted systematically in the way in which I have survived, documented, and published with regard to prosecuting, not only in public on the internet, but also in federal court. And the entity that is demon possessed, and the entity that is also the U.S. government, acting through a population that are not private citizens, that are not private businesses, they're engaging in surveillance. They engage in this surveillance as serial killers, as murderers, as kidnappers. And once they are caught, which is what this entity is in the position of, they're caught, they then engage in more terrorism. And that is what satisfies their sick obsessions. This is the entity that is very much deserving of the public exposure and prosecution that is impending. And they are so sick, understand, that they engage in more of it, even while they are sitting around and they know the federal government is watching, and they know the federal government is going to provide justice. This is the entity that is that obsessed and delusional, okay? And that you can only wonder how many people have already died at the hands of the United States government, the hands of the people of the city of Ontario, the hands of the people of the state throughout California. This is an entity that is a serial killer. How many people have died at the hands of Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields, to give you a specific name? Okay, they have targeted many people that are already dead. I am one that they failed. This is a failed sacrifice that you're witnessing, and it's occurring under the name of the government, under the name of the city of Ontario, every company, every level of government, including the state itself, Gavin Newsom, and the state of California. Okay, these are serial killers that are gang stalking, and they're demon possessed, and they engage in targeting people together that they conspire to murder, and psychological torture, which is again the sexual violence, the amplified audible noise, while they're engaged in what is every moment of the day of the existence of that targeted individual is under surveillance. All right, this is an entity that's engaging in that, and it is so deranged that it doesn't have the understanding that this is that mental illness that it takes out on a targeted individual, and that targeted individual doesn't get to tell anybody how psychopathic, how sick the demon-possessed that took their lives are, how sick they are in the ways in which they attacked them, how sick they are in the ways in which that they surveyed them and violated them. And I've been giving voice to that, including while it sounds as though a Tyrannosaurus Rex is rumbling in the sky space. These are demons who are psychopath, including while I read their license plates. 7NUR081 is the psychopath that's stalking all night long. removing my blanket so that they can more closely touch my body and stare at me, stalking me all night as an entity, molesting me with impossible light. That's the mindset of the predator that is the U.S. government that's acting through a population of serial killers. Okay, and there is no volume that will remove my voice. This is what's wrong with the entity. It both wants to rape me, kidnap, and murder me, but also doesn't want me to say anything. That's, again, encompassed within the third party terrorist 7NUR081. And that ongoing act of terrorism is committed by a population that is acting via the government, the United States government that's engaged in gang stalking. This is how Tracy Banks and Jason Fields were able to commit it against me. Cannot do it without the corruption of the government, and the corrupt government cannot do it without the people of the state. And that corrupt system that commits murder is what is being exposed while it is occurring through what are while the demon-possessed population is being exposed. Okay, the demon-possessed population are the ones that are having sex with kids. They're the ones that are raping people. They're the ones that are stealing and setting people up. The demon-possessed gang stalkers are the ones that committed crimes and tried to set me up. They did so on behalf of the United States government. That then entertained those lies in a courtroom. That again, Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields utilized to try to steal my property. It's all being returned to me, but this is relevant. The United States government, Tracy Banks, Jason Fields, the gang stalkers that engaged in criminal activity in my name, which again, speaking to the demons that are stalking, the license plates that I'm reading, these are not third parties that are ignorant. They're third parties that know exactly who I am, including while they stalk me with impossible light, like I capture on video, where Sarah's Regis Group is documented engaged in terrorism. 7NUR081 is very specific with regard to who they are targeting in relevant position, engaging in criminal activity against one whom they are not ignorant of. In the same way that the people of the state, when I don't know their name, taking out loans, committing criminal acts in my name, intending to frame me. This is the entity that commits that in the name of the United States government. And all night long, the demons that are engaged in what is amplified noise that is so loud, all right? It's piercing through what is the headphones, and it occurs with simultaneity to my most minute movement. Those are demons, and those are demons that you hear now, but they're not amplifying it like they were at 3 and 4 and 2 o'clock in the morning when they're removing my blanket because they want to stare at my buttocks while they're stalking all night long as a population of sex offenders. They want to stare at my body while they're molesting me with light. Those are the demons that then go home and have sex with children, by the way, and they put it on the internet. And then the United States government prosecutes and maintains a Megan's list like it is not a sex offender. And it is. Those are the demon-possessed that engage that engage in that level of hypocrisy, maintaining that ongoing duplicitous existence, presenting one way and having a whole other reality. This is that public corruption. So be mindful of that while I'm reading more license plates of the entity that is engaging in this ongoing violence, and doing so because it is fully aware that it is going to prison, that it is being deported, that it is being disbanded, that it is being shut down from existence altogether, that it's being removed from the ability to be exposed to the public anymore, that it is being prosecuted and going to federal prison, that it is being labeled as a sex offender, that it is being appropriately identified in this nation as a terrorist. This is the entity that knows that and is engaging in this, including while they're waiting on what they don't know is coming. Who's going to be raided? Where is the raid going to happen? That's what the entity that's inflicting harm, and I'm documenting it because the same entity that engages in that psychopathic pattern of conduct is the same entity that's harming itself. I'm the one that the entity is targeting, but I'm the one that's prosecuting them and giving voice to what they do to people that are already 6 feet under, traumatizing them before they take their life, sexually violating them as a population before they steal from them and set them up and frame them up and kidnap them. And that's where they kill them, inside of facilities like West Valley Jail. Those are murderers and pedophiles and sex offenders. And they're being prosecuted while they've been engaged. Understand, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department engaged in terrorism, sexual violence, stalking me all night long as an entity. Okay? Understand that. Recognize this entity that's acting as a group. This is the term group stalking. The group is elaborate. It's the state of California. License 7NUR081. License P as in Paul, G as in George, 031. That's a handicap. License 7 Robert 29245. License 5 Bob Igloo Apple 451. 7 Paul Edward Henry 108. 7 George Victor Nancy 970. 3 Xavier Thomas Zebra 513. 5 Larry 35039. 9, Barry Xavier 403. 5, Nancy Barry, that is 8, Nancy Barry Xavier 452. 9, Robert Yolanda Xavier 859. 3, Paul 0 Samuel 868. And they're all still stalking me right now as I speak. 5, Frank Nancy Karen 216. 7, Larry Jerry J with a J Edward 075. 8, Henry Edward Xavier 279. 927 81 Dog 3. 5, Edward Mary Victor 014. 6, Wendy Nancy Wendy 375. 7, Charlie David Zebra 416. 53922 Sam 3. 9, Robert Jerry Apple 822. 9, Edward Charlie George 322. 200 Robert Frank, that's a handicap. 8, Victor Paul Xavier 836. 9, Uncle Xavier Sam 019. 5, Apple Karen Edward 227. 05758W3. 9G IT, so 9 George Igloo Thomas 936. 9 Yolanda George Uncle 960. 8 Nancy Queen Wendy 239. 9 Barry Wendy Larry 503. 9 Karen Apple Mary 979. 9 Mary Frank Jerry 395. 7 Charlie Victor. I can't really see that one. You can scratch that one. It's kind of 7CVB085 or 7CV8085. It looks like it's a black Toyota Camry. So 7 Charlie Victor Bob 085. Substantially similar. 7 Charlie Victor 8085. 7 Charlie Victor 80B5. It's a California plate. It's on a black Toyota Camry. 08 Charlie Apple Sam 16. 8 Wendy Yolanda Apple 313. 8 Nancy Larry Mary 774. 7 Paul Apple Edward 846. 560 Zebra Dog, that's handicap. 6 Paul David Frank 427. 9 David Zebra Apple 928. 9 Henry Zebra Bob 633. 9, I think that is, license 9 Charlie Karen Yolanda 152. License 7 Victor David Uncle 249. 8 Uncle Edward Karen 009. 9 Larry Roger George 866. 8 Robert Karen 072. 6 Wendy Paul Larry 174. 9 Karen Nancy Thomas 403. 9 Edward Charlie George 322. 'Okay, and license 9 Frank Xavier David 241. 23210 W3. License 8 Bob Jerry Bob 012. 5 Yolanda Sam Wendy 289. 18028 Robert 1. License 9 David Barry Paul 442. All right, and this is sexual violence inflicted and ongoing psychological torture inflicted by the City of Ontario, which is another means of identifying the state of California. This is sexual violence, psychological torture inflicted by every level of government within the City of Ontario. So that's the Ontario City Council. That's the mayor of the City of Ontario, Paul Leon, who's being removed from office. Every gang stalking mayor is being removed for what the population that they are a part of is engaging in furtherance of murder. You're not staying in office. And it's exposing public corruption at every level of government in that city, which is occurring in that state. Paul Leon's being removed from office, and he is inflicting harm, psychological torture, sexual violence, wanting to remove my blanket so that you could stare at my body while you're stalking me all night long. Maintaining this level of heavy traffic at 12, 1, 2, 3. There's nobody that's on the streets. They're engaged in surveillance, just like you see them doing under a fake sun that remains, where Paul Leon's office is, the Ontario City Hall. Because this is where I remain on Euclid Avenue. And the population is stalking. And a population of stalkers is exposing itself. And this is the entity of sex offenders that's going to be nationwide news, okay? That a sex offender is not only an individual. A sex offender is a government body. A sex offender is a community. A sex offender is a company. A sex offender is a public entity. And it's pursuant to a pattern of conduct. Sexual violence weaved into that pattern of conduct, which is demonic. And you need to understand that sexual violence is inherent to the spirit of Satan. People that are perverts, people that inflict sexually violent harms on other people, it's demonic. Those are demons. And this is the entire government. So you're understanding unprecedented sexual violence. Okay, all sorts of machinations regarding how sexual violence can be inflicted. And the government's going to be prosecuted for it. And the government's acting via company names such as ARCO, such as Chevron, such as Starbucks, such as Wells Fargo, such as Ceres Regis Group, such as Gloria's Cochinas, every business in the state of California, every single last one, because they're all engaged in surveillance. And I've proven that through the P.O.C. License plate 8 Victor Xavier Frank 855. Every airline, Delta Airlines, Frontier Airlines, China Airlines, China Airway, Starlux, American Airlines, Amazon Prime Air, FedEx, UPS. You already know they're gang stalkers. They're also gang stalking using planes, which I've also documented. Every single last airline is sharing in ongoing harassment, sexual violence, touching my person, removing so that I could be more vulnerable to them molesting me while they obsess over my body while I'm in an unconscious state, which is the conduct of a predator, by the way. That is stalking. Okay, I've already proven that traffic in California is a means of surveillance. It is not traffic. Traffic is in reference to that First Amendment right, freedom of speech, private activity. And that's not what this is. It's the specific environment. Traffic is ongoing, obvious surveillance, which you're listening to the criminal activity in real time. The entity is being prosecuted for sexual violence that it commits through the multitudes of people, scores of people, millions of people, essentially. And that's what the entity is doing in a specific environment where you're under surveillance and you don't even know it by sex offenders individually and collectively. You're a sex offender with your 2.5 kids while you're engaged in gang stalking, while you are walking around monitoring with minor kids, and you are telling yourself, lying to yourself as a demon, because that's what they do. You're a demon-possessed person with 2.5 kids and a husband while you're out gang stalking me, another woman. You're also a homosexual while you have 2.5 kids and you're married and you're out gang stalking me and monitoring my vagina in the bathroom in ways in which you never anticipated would be exposed. All of that is being exposed, and the United States government's being prosecuted for it. And so is every company. Understand, this entity is acting through companies. You're going to prosecute the companies. If they're acting through the government, you're going to prosecute the government. It is the entity that is personifying Satan, actually. That's why you have the demonic criminal activity of this entity. Okay? And I'm documenting many of them by license plates. Hold on, I have the license plate. This is the entity you need to identify sex offenders, Alan D. Wapner. Okay, the gang stalker by the Ontario International Airport, which they openly engage in it. You are good because you're exposing what people need to know, that you're a violent sex offender, that you're a predator and a terrorist, and one that hates the United States. You know all of that while you're engaged in the un-American crime of domestic terrorism, which is gang stalking. You know all of that because you understand the mental illness of those that are engaging in this demonic targeting system. They're demons who are violent sex offenders. Sexual violence is weaved into every element that they are practicing: stalking with light, stalking with noise, and stalking with presence in the path. It's sexual violence practiced as a population before they murder the one that they are ceaselessly, perpetually violating. Before they murder that person. Okay? These are sex offenders, and it includes Alan D. Wapner. While the entity has the sound of Tyrannosaurus Rex roaring in the sky space, Alan D. Wapner is engaged in sexual violence, and that is all night long. All night long, while a population acting on his behalf in concert with him, targeting me where I'm located, and that is proven through the entity stalking with commercial planes, stalking with impossible light, stalking as an entity, while the people of the state are stalking me. The city of Ontario, which he is a part of, he's on the Ontario City Council, which is a gang stalker. He is exposed as a sex offender, Alan D. Wapner. All right. License plate 6 Windy Jerry 696. License plate 00716 Windy 2. License 7 Nancy Yolanda Frank 576. License plate 9 Barry Daniel Edward 165. License plate 9 Jerry George Jerry 509. License plate 8 Jerry Yolanda David 632. License 8 Paul Robert Uncle 151. All right, and the entity that is engaged in sexual violence is also operating under the name of Starbucks, which is headquartered in Seattle, Washington. Starbucks is the venue that committed kidnapping, and they've engaged in criminal acts of obstruction of justice on several documented occasions. And this is also relevant to the sexual violence and terrorism that Starbucks still is engaged in, including right now and also all night long. Because as you know, the pattern of conduct is underway by a population and by a government. And when Starbucks closes, you also know that they're still gang stalking. And not only that, the people of the state that engage in surveillance via Starbucks are gang stalking. And they do so while they are engaged in what is parking in front of Starbucks, by engaging in what is working at Starbucks, by engaging in what is maintaining presence around Starbucks while they're stalking with light and engaging in that P.O.C. together as an entity under the guise of Starbucks. Remember, the property of Starbucks is there to provide what is a convenient means of engaging in surveillance in a way in which you are not going to readily associate criminal activity and surveillance, especially because we are in the United States where you are ignorant about the fact that you're even under surveillance in the first place. So you are not associating venues that are open late at night as a means of stalking with light, as a means of surveilling another person, psychologically torturing them, stalking them in the path, while the government's engaging in what is conspicuous stalking using planes and helicopters. And it is occurring in concert with venues like Starbucks that are headquartered in Seattle. Okay? The entity, I want to be clear, you can hear the third party speaking in the background. This is the entity that engages in that. I'm going to go ahead and take her picture. She's got the pink backpack. This is the one that you hear inside of the library, vocalizing a threat on behalf of the entity, which is what she's doing now. She's coming out of nowhere. No, she's not coming out of nowhere. She's a demon, and this is the United States government gang stalking with a third party who was communicating a threat. This is under the fake sun at 6:45 a.m., where the entity that is indeed a sex offender, obsessed with my buttocks, obsessed with my vagina, engaged in what are criminal acts against me, against demons like that who are not ignorant about me, who are specifically targeting on behalf of the government that is anticipating raids, anticipating prison, anticipating prosecution, sends in third parties to commit sexual acts of violence. Many of those I just documented by license plate. That third party you'll see in images at 6:45 a.m. All these license plates, all these demons you hear in the background, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the rumbling of noise like a dinosaur is in the airspace. This is the entity that engages in that foolish conduct. And Alan D. Wapner is being removed from office for it. He's being identified as a sex offender. While he's both both married with children, and guess what? He's also a violent sex offender and a psychopath. He's demon possessed, to be very specific. He's demon possessed. He's demon possessed and sending in terrorists. This is what the entity's engaged in. When you are raped by the government. When you're harassed and physically battered, you're harassed and physically battered by the government. The same government that is foolishly engaging in criminal conduct while I'm documenting it, and you're being prosecuted for it. And this is understanding and connecting everything that they've engaged in. They did the same thing when they stole my money and my property. They did the same thing when they sat in fake court hearings and defamed my character. They did the same thing when they engaged in stealing from me, stealing my vehicle, knowing exactly who I am, knowing exactly that my vehicle wasn't abandoned. It's the same Ontario police and the same population sending in demons that have already vocalized a threat on its behalf while I'm documenting this right now. That's not a coincidence, especially under the fake sun that's rising and setting, by the way, at this same venue, this same location at OVITT Family Community Library. But this is where it's rising right now at 6:47 a.m. This is the entity that's surrounded, and I want to be clear, the mental illness is very real, and it is a national security threat, and this is why I vocalize at this level what you need to know. People that will engage in acts of violence, such as things that you are aware of on the news, shooting up elementary schools, all right, engaging in what is harm, such as crashing planes into bodies of water, crashing planes into helicopters. The entity that's engaged in what is murdering politicians. This is the entity that's engaging in this. This is amongst what is surveillance. And they're not doing anything anonymously, and there's nothing that needs to be investigated. They're engaging in these criminal acts amongst an entity that I'm exposing to you in California. That's the entity that just engaged in what is sending the same third party. The same third party that you'll see on September, today's the 16th. Let me see, what's today again? Yeah, the 16th, yesterday on the 15th. That's the same one that's in the bathroom. As an entity, Alan D. Wapner, that's monitoring my vagina, is speaking through this same third party that's threatening me in the bathroom because Alan D. Wapner is very heavily documented. He's being removed from office. He's being identified as a terrorist. The Ontario International Airport is not actually concerned with maintaining flights to destinations. My documentation shows that it's engaged in terrorism, which is the whole purpose of what California is engaging in, including through corrupt businesses like Starbucks. That's why I'm being gang stalked inside of Starbucks. That's the whole purpose of what Saris Regis is engaging in at 320 North Euclid Avenue, calling itself Downtown Ontario Luxury Apartments, where terrorists reside inside of that venue, and where terrorists stalk by commercial planes over that venue, and where terrorists engage in what is surrounding all around that venue, and where terrorists are engaged in what is stalking through the maintenance of a business. In order to maintain and facilitate that, it's public corruption, where terrorism and criminal surveillance is underway. It's a federal RICO case, and that entity is what is communicating a threat, while a third party is the same third party that's been engaged in communicating a threat like she's going to F me up. This is the entity that engaged. These are the tactics of Satan. It's very pathetic, but it's very obvious, so you need to witness that. So you need to look at the images, because I'm not making that up. You'll see her red hair. You'll see her pink backpack. That's the government sending that in order to recommunicate a threat. And remember, it's not based on whether I'm actually scared. It's based on the ordinary target individual that's targeted like that by a mob of demons who all have knives and guns, and they're keeping somebody in a bubble somewhere, and they're murdering them in an alley. And then they're all engaging in what is reporting it on the news as though it's some mysterious act, and it's criminal activity committed by the government that targets people, keeping them under surveillance and targets them. That when they're subject to what is a gang rape inside of a jail, and they're stating that it was committed by the inmates and they didn't see anything, and then they wound up dead, hanging by a sheet in their cell. They were murdered by that entity, by that jail. That's the government engaging in surveillance. That's what you need to understand when I'm showing you the demon sitting in the same pathetic third party that would not bust a grape. I mean that. This is a coward, and this is the spirit of a coward. While they are indeed not driving by, they're stalking. They're monitoring, and they're obsessed with my buttocks, obsessed with my vagina, obsessed even with what I say, even while they hate what I'm saying because I'm documenting them. They're obsessed with me. They're demons, and they murder people. They destroy people's lives. They are the U.S. government. They are acting through the system of gang stalking, through company names as well, and government bodies. And people like Tracy Banks and Jason Fields and Eric Spencer and Shanita Ramaya McLean, people that are in your lives that are gang stalking you because surveillance is underway in the United States. And these third-party license plates that I'm reading are not strangers. They are the entity that is gang stalking. And they are communicating a threat uniformly. And they're doing so while they are also aware that they're being documented. And that's also coloring the crime that they've committed against the federal prosecutor. This is the entity's inability to control its psychopathic impulses. And that's Providence, because it aided me in prosecuting and proving what this government's doing. All right, license 7NYF576. There's no coincidences there, and it couldn't be more foolish. So you'll see that captured in images. It'll be uploaded to the Google Drive momentarily. License plate. And that's the whole entity, including the United States government, that's engaged in communicating a threat. 5 Charlie Larry Victor 569. 7 Samuel Henry Xavier 334. 9 Henry Robert Nancy 357. 6 Amber Nancy Mary 155. Barry Charlie 34 Nancy 20. That's a paper plate on an old Honda Civic. 8 Wendy Apple Larry 795. 7 Larry Xavier Robert 660. 8 Wendy 0 Victor 597. Excuse me. Edward Frank 36 Wendy 97. That's a paper plate on a Nissan. License 7 Karen 0 Zebra 048. 50906 Jerry 3. 9 Apple Victor Charlie 262. 6 Xavier Paul 337. And as an aside, you're understanding the malice of OVITT Family Community Library, because they are sending in that third party to harass and threaten me in the bathroom, and she's speaking as a state, and then they're also maliciously acting like, oh, what's going on here? Okay, we're going to escort, in the same way that the entity just sent that same demon right now, and that's what I was describing to you yesterday. You're dealing with malicious psychopaths, and that's coloring, again, in the same way that they commit the crime, they're going to find out how they're going to be targeted by federal law prosecuting terrorism. Okay, that's what you're learning. That's what you're witnessing. 8 Edward Queen Barry 902. So that's what happened inside of the library. That was an entity, that was a demon sent in, obsessed with my vagina at the same time, but also would fantasize about inflicting harm because she would not bust a grape. That's the reality. These are cowards. That's why they're stalking as a population, by the way. That's why they're stalking as a collection of demons. Because it's supposed to be a bullying system where they are successfully murdering people, and believe me, they're serial killers. The government has murdered a plethora of people. You're talking about decades of this system existing. Okay? You're talking about a lot of people that are already dead. People that are innocent sitting in jail somewhere. At least they're innocent of what the entity accused them of. They are innocent, and you're innocent insofar as you have a right to not be subject to this, and there's nothing that the government can claim about you that makes what the government has done lawful, okay? It's unlawful, and it never changes. That never changes. All right, license. Yeah, you'll see the images of that third party. All right, Sarah's Regis Group. Their headquarters is located at 3501 Jamboree Road, Suite 3000, Newport Beach, California, 92660. And as I've documented, Newport Beach is in Orange County. And Orange County Sheriff is engaged in gang stalking. I documented them on Baker and Costa Mesa, gang stalking me under the fake sun, where the entity is right now having the fake sun in the morning and, as I've documented, in the evening. Okay, this is the entity that's engaging in that conduct, while the Orange County Sheriff is documented gang stalking, and I updated that documentation, meaning I went back to Orange County just to go ahead and reconfirm what it is that I've already testified to through my public investigation regarding what different cities and counties the same state of California is committing, and they're doing it under the fake sun. Orange County Sheriff is a gang stalker, and so is Sarah's Regis, headquartered in Newport Beach, California. And Sarah's Regis is also a gang stalker, targeting me as I was a employee of that third party, where I was targeted by the state in 2013. Okay, and this is another employer, again, harassing me on the job and also gang stalking unbeknownst to me, but they were still gang stalking. All right, that doesn't make it less criminal because I wasn't yet documenting yet. Sarah's Regis is indeed a gang stalker, and that's why the demons are engaging in that pattern of conduct at Downtown Ontario Luxury Apartments, which is a sex offender. So is Sarah's Regis, it's a sex offender, and they're engaged in domestic terrorism. All right, and that's why the fake sun is rising and setting at 320 North Euclid Avenue. And that's why the people of the state are gang stalking and molesting me with impossible light as sex offenders at 320 North Euclid Avenue in Ontario, California. Sarah's Regis Group, their license number is 01977-865.
corrupt property management companies like Aberneth Capital Management, like Ceres Regis Group, like speaker companies, they're losing their licensure. They're losing the ability to participate in federal housing programs, and the facts and circumstances are even providing for federal prison, like speaker companies. They're going to prison. I documented them gang stalking me as my employer and as the landlord while they were targeting, just like Ontario Police's, LAPD is serving to prosecute and disband Ontario Police and put people like Ocean at Starbucks in federal prison because LAPD was gang stalking me under a fake sun. And while it's rising right now at 6:40, what's the time? 6:56 a.m. This is what LAPD was gang stalking me under through my living room window at the same time, which is not occurring in a natural environment. And this is the same street where the entity is gang stalking. This is the third party under the fake sun that's monitoring. This is the same street where the entity is at the food festival after 6 p.m. in the same city of Ontario is gang stalking where I'm capturing the sunrise right now. I've already captured it. And this is the same street where A. Morris, who's going to federal prison, and just like I told you, Corporal Robledo, she's going to federal prison, and the Ontario Police is being disbanded as an exposed terrorist organization, committing murders and kidnappings, not engaged in law enforcement, as their mental illness and their corruption, both while they target me so much and also while they're doing so in that specific environment in conformity to an impossible pattern of conduct. It's impossible because it's supernatural, which means the level of evidence is probative. It's beyond what is beyond a reasonable doubt because it's supernatural regarding their pattern of conduct. The sun could never be in Orange County when Ontario Police are stalking me under that sunset on the same street, like I documented on Saturday at the food festival after 6 p.m. That's where Jerry Larry Wendy 984 is engaged in the sex offense, which I documented all night, and is sharing in a sex offense right now as a population and has no privacy rights. It's fully exposed to what is documented. If that's an immigrant, that's deportation. But you're talking about being documented and prosecuted as the state. This is the entire city of Ontario is engaged in targeting. And my documentation shows that, including while this third party is gang stalking merely by driving on the street, where the shadow of their car is running across my person. Impossible light, as impossible as you touching me on the opposite side of the street with your headlights. As impossible as the fake sun remaining over me 12 hours later on this same street. That's a sex offender and that's a terrorist acting in furtherance of murder. Okay, this is P.O.C. ARCO is headquartered in Los Angeles, La Palma specifically, and they're engaged in that pattern of conduct with the people of the state. And they're doing so in furtherance of murder and kidnapping. Again, ARCO is, the headquarters is located at 6 Center Point Drive, La Palma, California, 90623. And ARCO is engaged in ongoing facilitation. That is a means of surveillance, which ARCO, again, plans on you not ever associating or identifying it. And they're doing so with regard to these sex offenders that are documented. They engage in surveillance by stalking at the gas station all night, engaging in surveillance, and then purchasing gas. Or just sitting on it, because they don't even have to purchase gas, but that's what they do with regard to stalking in the path at what is this venue that's right here across the street, where ARCO is engaged in stalking right now with every population. Again, 8L24871 is engaged in stalking with ARCO that's in relevant position, molesting through the thousands of people that are stalking in the path under a fake sun. These are sex offenders that cannot help their sexually predatory impulse to touch, to follow you around, stalk you while touching you, stalk you in supernatural ways such as with impossible light. The fake sun is the iteration during the daytime of what they're doing at nightfall, where you saw demons gang stalking while they're crossing path and engineer lights moving across the sidewalk while they're across the street, moving across this bench that I'm on while they're across the street, and doing so while I have impossible light activity is surrounding, while I have two shadows on the sidewalk adjacent to each other. Okay, ARCO is engaged in gang stalking, and ARCO is engaged in what is a civil and criminal prosecution as a terrorist, doing so with regard to what is public corruption. All right, they're targeting with the state of California. And that's every ARCO, not just the one that's right here at 434 North Euclid Avenue. It is the same with it's the same legal analysis for what is going to be removed, and that's the mayor, Paul Leon, and it is not even responsible or accurate to describe Paul Leon as a mayor. He is part of the same community of demons. He's a part of the same community of violent sex offenders who crouch in bathroom stalls to stalk and monitor my vagina, who are psychopaths stalking with things such as amplified noise, which is also occurring in bathrooms where they're monitoring my vagina, based on what is criminal surveillance. This is un-American. And it's also criminal pursuant to obstruction, but also public corruption. All right, which every business and every third-party license plate, for example, and every citizen is engaging in. And the citizens act through company names, and that's what ARCO represents. The entity acts through government bodies. That's what Paul Leon and the Ontario City Hall represents. This is what Alan D. WAPNER represents, okay? So it's currently, by the way, 7:01 a.m. This is the entity that's been engaged in all night long. Understand, Paul Leon removes my blanket. Paul Leon acting as an entity, stalking me all night long, obsessed with my buttocks, obsessed with my vagina, obsessed with my body. Wants removed my blanket in order to more closely, more intimately molest my body with light all night long, while Paul Leon was stalking me all night long through this population that's currently stalking me under a fake sun. That's Paul Leon following me around, keeping me under surveillance all day long. He's being removed from office. No stalker, no psychopath, and no sex offender is going to be a mayor of any city in California or in the country. Gang stalkers, that is, terrorists, are being removed from office. Okay, 9KIL 270. The entity is engaged in this, and I'm going to go ahead and remind you about the fake sun that's captured in the afternoon, in the evening, where these same demons are engaging what is walking around wearing Ontario police uniforms as well, engaging what is the food festival. Here's that fake sun, the same position that it is right now, 12 hours later, in perfect alignment to me. This is P.O.C. Alrighty, it is currently, like you can hear on my podcast, I'm capturing video to coexist with the ongoing documentation of the demon-possessed that are targeting. This is the same where their last night stalking with Impossible Light. The shadow of their vehicles is Impossible Light. That's a major target, 6BYG083. That's Impossible Light, and the entity was doing that last night while I'm on the opposite side of the street, and your headlights are not going to reach over here, touching my breast. It's not gonna blind my face. It's not gonna move across the concrete of the Glorias Cochinas, those plants right there on the bottom of the sidewalk, and it's also not gonna touch the bench over here. This is stalking with light. As you see the shadows of their vehicles, this is another means of touching. These are demons, and they're doing it under the fake sun. Engineer light is on the passenger side of their vehicles. They're driving through engineer light, 8NCP618, 9LP8018. Impossible lights on the passenger side of their cars, while the fake sun's on the driver's side of their cars, and the shadow of their vehicles is tall. It's reaching across the sidewalk. These are demons. While Impossible Light is moving above, these are demons. And that's a daytime iteration of the nighttime evidence of stalking with light. This is the entity that's engaged. That's Impossible Light on the passenger side of that demon's vehicle. Okay? That is, I can walk into it and you'll see my shadow on the side of that demon's car, which is Impossible Light activity. And it's also Impossible Light activity because this is the fake sun where the demon-possessed gather while they're engaged in terrorism and psychological torture as a community of sex offenders, as rapists, as pedophiles, as murderers, as kidnappers that engage in criminal activity and targeting with the United States government. They're psychopaths that stalk with engineer light while they're keeping you under surveillance on communication devices as well, and also on the internet, and also what I'm showing you in surveillance where the entity is engaged in what is surveillance that's happening in the environment. The fake sun is on the same Euclid Avenue right here where they had the food festival, where you saw the fake sun after 6 p.m. in the same position while I'm merely standing on that side of the street, and the fake sun is on this side of the street, and the entity is stalking me. Walking around at the food festival, and what do you see? The Ontario Police Department walking around, stalking with light, just like this. They're persons, they're monitoring on video, and this is the entity that's doing so. And like I stated in that video, those demons are going to federal prison. Okay, the entity is engaging in this, and what I documented also, the entity is maintaining the food festival on this same street where the entity was engaged in criminal summoning. The entity is doing so while the entity is stalking by helicopter, and 12 hours from now, the entity is engaging in what is maintaining a sunset in alignment to me, and that's how you know that 8FMB814 is stalking me. And in addition to the fact that the shadow of that demon's vehicle is reaching all across the sidewalk, which is Impossible Light activity, in addition to the fact that when the demons drive by, Impossible Light activity is moving underneath this structure. All means of identifying demons that are targeting you in ways in which you are able to identify and prove. That's P.O.C. And they do so in furtherance of murdering you. And this is exposing what is a large, massive issue regarding what is mental illness that is not as rare as the entity would like you to think. Propaganda has been conditioning our minds in this country regarding actual mental illness. This is showing millions of people that are mentally ill, and they're demons that are also engaged in criminal activity. And it's happening under Paul Leon's corrupt leadership, Alan D. WAPNER's corrupt leadership, the necessity of removal of the psychopath LORENZ, where the entity is engaging in what is stalking. This is pursuant to criminal surveillance. All right, and this is what the entity is doing at every single venue. A sex offender, 1407504, a demon that's operating a school bus that's engaged in criminal activity. The fake sun remaining stationary, but when I'm on OmniTran, that's identifying another gang stalker. The fake sun is moving in real time. You see this engineer light on the vehicle? That's Impossible Light activity. This is the entity that's engaging in that. while they're stalking in the path. What sunlight is going to appear when they're driving in the fake suns on the side? These are demons, and a collection of them. The government is targeting through a population because they're conspiring murder. Okay, and this is the fake sun showing you how murder is committed by a population, how kidnapping is committed by a population. They're the ones that engage in criminal summoning, and this is my shadow on her car. That's Impossible Light. She's stalking, and that's it. Every single last one of them are. And so are the demons and the corrupt businesses that are sharing in the conspiracy to commit murder. They engage in gang stalking via the maintenance of such businesses. Okay? On Sunday, I documented the fake sun over the top of my head right here at ARCO. All right, with the terrorists, the Ontario International Airport, right here at ARCO, the fake sun, that is right now at 7, over the top of my head. 5 hours later, it's right over me while I'm across the street, while I was walking toward the OVITT Family Community Library, where you know the fake sun is setting right over there. This is the entity that is indeed gang stalking and is engaged in an all night long sexual violence and harassment. And that's because this government, Jason Isaac Fields, Tracy Banks, the Ontario Police Department, the City of Ontario, Paul Leon, the state of California, is anticipating what is a federal prosecution, nationwide exposure. They're waiting on it, and they know that it's coming. It is impending doom, and they engaged in what I'm documenting now on the podcast as well, ongoing criminal act of obstruction, which this entity is also going to be prosecuted for. Okay? And they're going to prison, they're being deported, they're being removed from office, being disbanded, etc., etc. But they're also doing so while they are hostile and harassing and terrorizing me because I'm prosecuting them. That sun state, which is a sex offender, that's light activity under a fake sun. And that's how you're understanding the system that is necessarily happening through a population that maintains businesses and residences for gang stalking by that entity full of demons. 6SLE288, monitoring my vagina, threatening me in the bathroom, maintaining plane activity over the apartment complex, and doing so where the fake sun is rising and setting in alignment to me, okay? That's where the entity was molesting my body with light, and the sex offenders, every airline is sharing in that terrorism, okay? The entity is engaging in this P.O.C. and doing so with impunity. That's exactly what they documented while they were stalking with light last night. The Ontario International Airport is actually engaged in terrorism, not the provision of flights. Okay, that's why the entity is engaging in flights that are not published on websites. On their website. The Southwest Airlines is engaged in what is hovering over Sarah's Regis Group. That's a gang stalker. That's Sarah's Regis gang stalking, by the way, while the government is engaged in relevant positioning, stalking me in the specific environment, sharing in what is keeping me under surveillance and furtherance of murder. And Southwest Airlines engages in what is a large U-turn, and that's no arrival or departure. Neither does it ever include from the airport hovering over this venue, and it's coexisting with what is impossible light activity. That's Southwest Airlines that's monitoring. And so is every other airline. And that's what I'm documenting on the podcast. And as I document, this is ongoing impunity. And the government, the companies, the people of the state, this is going in federal court. And this is the entity that the impunity that the entity demonstrates now is going to directly rebut tears shed in court. Okay? Pleas made for mercy, for less time, for less severe consequences. Okay? Spectrum is gang stalking the shadow of that vehicle. Pay attention, run the tape back. It's impossible light activity. Spectrum is employed by demons. That's a demonic company, and they're engaged in terrorism. This is P.O.C. It's currently 7:09 a.m. The entity is maintaining the fake sun over the Economy Inn, by the way. Don't forget about that. Economy Inn is much south, down where the 60 freeway is, where the entity is flying over my head on the sidewalk while I'm in the parking lot. Remember the video that I'm capturing at 7:15 a.m.? There's no sun that's going anywhere while I'm at the OVITT Family Community Library at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's still over the top of my head. And stalking by commercial planes doesn't slow down that prosecution. It shows that the Ontario International Airport and third parties, license 7YJX757, is sharing in that criminal pattern of planning. And this is how demons commit murder as a government act, organized crime, which is exposing Gavin Newsom. It's exposing every mayor in California, and it's exposing the issue that is a threat to American citizens. Demon possession, which is proven through an environment, and criminal activity of the government and the people is serving for what is a threat and impending harm to unsuspecting American citizens. Okay? That's P.O.C. All right, it is currently, again, 7:10 a.m. Pay attention to the entity maintaining two planes engaging what is U-turns. This is that which is I'm showing you as a pattern of unpublished flights that are merely engaging what is relevant positioning in the environment surrounding me. That's the L&D WAPNER targeting. And the Ontario International Airport's engaged in terrorism, and it's a national security threat. That is years of evidence, what is resulting in what is shutting down that the entity, the state of California's means of terrorism, which is that airport. It's entirely corrupt and illegitimate, all right? So that is the entity doing so, and the entity is doing so under the fake sun. P.O.C. It's 7:11 a.m. Okay? I just want you to pay attention to that light up there. All right, this is the other iteration. Just want to be clear because you're understanding the system. That's what they're doing at nightfall when your headlights are not reaching all the way over here. Your headlights aren't touching my breasts. Those are sex offenders and they're stalking. A population, a government is stalking. That is the demonic system of gang stalking. And it's the disbanding of the Ontario Police Department. This is P.O.C. All right, I captured video, the entity providing ongoing evidence against itself that the airport is stalking, that the airport's engaged in demonic means of stalking, which is relevant to psychological torture, and also that they're doing so with impunity because the entity is engaging in that while they're monitoring evidence at the same time, meaning aware that it's being captured, and you are just engaging in that in the face of a targeted individual, which is also relevant to the harms inflicted, and it's also relevant to the entity that hates this country and is engaged in cold-blooded murder, okay? This is the thing. This is what they're doing when nobody knows about it. This is what they're doing when nobody is documenting, when nobody is believing the target individual. And this is what they're doing in the face of the federal government that's going to prosecute them, that's going to raid them, that's going to remove them from being able to harm other people. And this is what they choose to do in response. I'm going to recover for it, and I'm also going to prosecute and make sure that terrorists are targeted in the ways that the law requires, and that's why I capture that for you. That's the government stalking by commercial planes. That's the government stalking as the population. You're looking at understanding stalking with light is the same conduct. You're looking at the same thing in a different way. Different iterations of the same element, stalking with light. The only thing that stalks with light are demons. It's demonic. And they're stalking with light that is not naturally occurring. They're doing so in an illusion. This is revealing what is massive mental illness. Psychopaths by the thousands are stalking with under the fake sun with the engineered light conduct. It's moving on the side of the passenger side of their cars. It's moving across the sidewalk, the shadows of their vehicles, reaching across because they're obsessively wanting to touch me. That's also giving you indication regarding the sex offender that's obsessed with me. It's all in possible light, and it's all based on me. I'm literally standing on this same street on Saturday where the entity has the food festival and the fake sun is rising, just like I stated in that video. Okay, this is the P.O.C. This is again the removal of Polyon, Alan D. WAPNER, Mike LORENZ, Michael GERKEN. These are terrorist organizations that are engaged in surveillance, and they have engaged in surveillance and furtherance of murder, and their criminal engagement in that conspiracy is proven by gang stalking by the City of Ontario and by the Ontario Fire Department, the Ontario Police Department, the Ontario International Airport, and the people of the state as well, including the City of Ontario, the municipality. The entity is doing so in concert with every business that's engaged in the pattern of conduct, and they're doing so while they're making money as corrupt businesses engaged in surveillance, conspiring, murder, and using those businesses while they're engaging in that, including while Southwest Airlines is gang stalking on video. That's a corrupt business, engaging in the conspiracy to murder while gang stalking by flying over Sarah's Regis, downtown Ontario luxury apartments. And doing so at the time, you're understanding you're going to prosecute the investigation of what is actually included in a pilot taken off from the airport. This is no rocket science. The entity's targeting by clearly just flying over the roof and making a U-turn in order to engage in what is crossing path with me while the fake sun is on the same street, while the engineered light is flying all about, while the entity is being documented and they're monitoring that documentation. That's speaking to Southwest Airlines being a particularly cold-blooded co-conspirator to murder, and doing so pursuant to what is absolute impunity. That's relevant to when you're draining the pockets. That's relevant when you're being prosecuted as demons that are stalking in planes because they're going to prison. All right, gang stalking pilots that murder American citizens, they're engaged in this system, conspiring murder, they're going to federal prison. So that's the entity that's engaging in that, and that's the evidence, and that's why it's relevant, and that's why I capture it, because it's serving a bigger purpose that the demon-possessed that are, again, this is mental illness. Satan has taken over the minds. So these are demons that engaged in witchcraft, that have engaged in taking an oath to Satan, that have engaged in and committed, and their right mind is gone, meaning they're not thinking about what's going to happen to them in court. They're not thinking about the weight of the evidence where there's no mystery about what they were doing and who they were doing it to. And there's also no mystery about what they knew and reasonably anticipated. What you're seeing is maniacal behavior, and that's going to serve what is a civil and a criminal prosecution. And it's already established. There's no mystery when it's getting in the courtroom. There's no mystery. I've already prosecuted, and the federal government already knows what everything that's going on. So they for the federal government right now to be waiting, the federal government is watching me merely prove over and over again what I've already established as a matter of evidence. The entity is, and I want to be clear, the evidence actually supports what is removing airlines that are gang stalking, and that would be removing Southwest Airlines, that would be removing United Airlines, Delta Airlines, definitely removing the airport. Okay, and that's because people's lives are at threat. as when you're seeing them gang stalk, you saw them doing that last night, doing so with impunity, just like you see the police. They're getting in on, it's like it's double dutch. You want to get in on it, you're getting in on a federal prosecution, you're getting in on serious federal charges. But the fact that they're doing so, that's informing people who can be saved from being sacrificed, from being murdered by psychopaths that target other people when other people don't have the evidence. Other people don't have the federal government doing their job. I had to endure for years before the federal government was forced, and that's only because I had my own case where they could not make up and lie and basically, I would say, basically overwhelm you based on their positions or whatever, over superseding what it is that I've proven that they're engaged in. The only reason why is because of the P.O.C. But for the evidence that I have and maintain, the federal government would not even be providing justice. And this is serving to protect any and every American citizen in the same manner. Okay? This is an entity that's, again, they are psychopathic and obsessive in accomplishing murder. And this, you're seeing them do that when they're not even going to accomplish a murder. The entity has, they have sacrificed their own lives. Many of them are going to drop dead based on witchcraft and voodoo and black magic that they've been practicing, that they've been betting that I was going to succumb to, and I'm not. I'm not. So these are demons that, again, their right mind is lost, and they are psychopathic with regard to the level of fear. But understand that a sick person that is fearful, that's a psychopath, they engage in more violence. They don't respond like a normal person that's fearful. Okay, so they engage in more sexual violence. They engage in more, obviously, criminal conduct, which a court is sitting and observing and is going to prosecute for. You're going to receive justice for that which the government did. They're not thinking, you're not dealing, and you're not observing people that are thinking. Those are demons that are flying those commercial planes. These are demons that are driving these vehicles. These are demons that are maintaining these businesses. This is a whole demon-possessed population. And the proof of that is the environment that is even targeting me. While they're driving and moving around in it, it's targeting me, including at nightfall. These are demons that do so. They engage in targeting together because they want to murder that person. And they're obsessed with my body. They're sexually perverted. The demon-possessed are actually, while they're gang stalking, you're seeing all the ways in which they're sick and they're tormented by the demons that motivate them to engage in the egregious acts that they do, because they're sexually obsessed with me. That's the pervert. They're also hostile and want to inflict harm and also hate me. That's the murderer. And they're also engaged in what is addicted and following everyone. That's the stalker. Okay? The entities engaging in this under the name of the state of California, under the name of the Ontario International Airport, under the name of the Ontario Police Department, under the name of the City of Ontario, under the name of the Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue, and every Starbucks in the state of California, under the name of license plate 4WON432 or 98UZ740, that's Tracy Banks. That's just a demon whose name I know and license plate I know. Under the name of Jason Isaac Fields, he's nothing other than a demon who crossed my path, and I happen to learn that demon's name. He's engaging in what is the whole population's problem. Demon possession has taken over a people, and now they're being prosecuted for criminal activity. What is public corruption? The government is filled with corrupt actors who are demon possessed. And they murder people through this demonic system. And they're going to be prosecuted very thoroughly for it, very thoroughly, including while they engage in it, while they knew the whole time that they were being documented, while they knew an American citizen was detailed in capturing evidence in order to enforce their rights, and they still, bloodthirsty, continued, even engaged in more violence. That's informing the prosecution of the government and the people of the state. That's what's walking by while they're engaged in what is threatening me through some third party with the pink backpack. That timing, while I'm documenting that, that's directly relevant. This is Tracy Banks, as I refer to her, gang stalking under the fake sun. This is an entity that's threatening my safety and my life, so I'm going to document this right now. You'll see her under the fake sun. That's not a coincidence as I refer to her and read her license plate. You'll see the fake sun, and this is somebody that I have not spoken to. You'll see the engineer light on the side of her car as well, my shadow. She is monitoring. She's the one that has my money and my property. She's the reason why the state of California, the city of Ontario is gang stalking right now. She's the reason why Jason Isaac Fields is lying in court, defaming my character, and everybody else targeting me along with her. She is engaged in gang stalking me right now with the city of Ontario and the state of California, and she has still to give me my money and my property while she is still engaged in the conspiracy to commit murder. And it's not a coincidence while I read her name and license plate that she pulls up. Okay, that's not a coincidence. That's an unlawful threat to my life. She's going to federal prison. License 98UZ740. remember, this is the same street where the fake sun rises and sets. And remember that she's keeping the entity is keeping the fake sun over me while I'm in her apartment at Woodside Senior Apartments, where she committed a kidnapping with the City of Ontario, the Ontario Police Department, which was documented on May 29, 2025. This is P.O.C. This is a demon that's engaged in monitoring. This is a demon that's engaged in what is stealing my identity and is doing so while she is a psychopath practicing witchcraft, has lied about being me, and is arriving in relevant position holding money out the window. Okay? This is a demon that is holding on to property that doesn't belong to her. And that's what she's not talking about. That's what she's not handing over right now. This is an unlawful threat, and she is going to federal prison, and that's why I'm just documenting her. I'm not addressing. This is nonsense, and I'm going to prosecute her in court. This is the same threat that the Ontario Police Department poses. This is P.O.C. All right, she's just stalking in the path, and she pulls right up on me, knows exactly where I'm at, and she knows the entire time. Like I stated, Tracy Banks is engaged in the entity that's pulling my blanket off, obsessed with my buttocks, obsessed with my vagina, stalking me in the bathroom, both obsessed with me, wants to be me, but also wants to harm me. This is why she's been gang stalking me with the government, okay? And that's what she's doing right now. There's no coincidence when the entity is engaging in that P.O.C. and Tracy Banks pulls up in the specific environment while the entity is stalking by commercial planes. This is why the entity is going to be disbanded, because there's gang stalking with Tracy Banks, and Tracy Banks pulling up is serving to disband the Ontario Police Department. Let me be clear, stalking in the specific environment does not make it more normal because you know the third party's name. It's serving to recognize the demon-possessed people of the state who are going to federal prison for engaging what is an intolerable level of facilitation. It remains the fake sun, it remains engineered light, which that third party who you're related to is engaging in, okay? That's P.O.C. She's going to federal prison. Okay, and what she's not talking about is money and property that she stole, that she's still in custody of, while I'm being gang stalked for that which she's going to prison for. That's why 8SNV302 is gang stalking me now. Stalking me in bathrooms, stalking me with the Ontario Police, stalking me with the Ontario Fire Department, and she's going to federal prison. Nobody is calling her and talking to her about anything. She's a stalker and knows exactly where I'm at, and that's what I've been telling you from the outset. That's how an entity is engaged in targeting. You're not dealing with the individual, you're dealing with an entity, and you're also dealing with a demonic spirit. When you're encountering one, you're encountering all of them. And she pulled up right now. Understand, when I'm referring to her and reading her license plate, that is a demon, and she's engaged in monitoring every moment of the day, including when I'm not physically in her presence. And again, she's stalking me. So she's in my presence unbeknownst to me. She just did that right now in my presence, and it's not a coincidence while I'm referring to her. It's also not a coincidence when it's happening under the fake sun. The fake sun that's never over Woodside Senior Apartments, where I'm documenting the Ontario PD who are going to be disbanded. They were targeting me at Woodside, and the fake sun rising right here, that's not going to help with regard to Tracy Banks' case. For terrorism, she engaged in terrorism with the state to try to murder me and steal my house and property with her sex partner, Jason Isaac Fields, the same age as her son. Okay, this is an entity that's still engaged in targeting, and so is Jason Isaac Fields, and anybody else coming into my presence like that, that's an unlawful threat. They're going to prison. That's why I'm documenting it. She's going to federal prison. All right, it is as unlawful as the Ontario Police Department being in your presence, including when they think that they will get away with securing the, and I put that in air quotes because they're gang stalking by calling it what is security at the food festival, and you're looking at the malice of that. That's the entity that sends in somebody to harass you, and then they call, oh, we'll escort them out. That's the entity that engages in that level of malice, and that's okay because you need to learn that malicious pattern of conduct because that's going to inform federal legislation. The demons are always engaging that they think that they're clever and they're not. They think that they're slick, and they're definitely not. They're idiots under a fake sun. And it is not less threatening, and it is not more normalized, and it's not okay when the people of the state, whose name you know, are gang stalking you. This is the unlawful threat to your life. That's the government acting via your mother, acting via your brother, acting via your dad, acting via your fake friends who are lying in court, perjuring themselves to defame your character so that you can be kidnapped, so that you can suffer until they lie and say that you're a drug addict. So when this entity commits murder, they will blame it on you. That's what Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields and Eric Spencer have committed, criminal activity in my name, and she's pulling up like she's anything less than a threat. License 55480R1 is engaged in unlawful conduct right along with Tracy Banks' license 9HUZ740. Equally unlawful. In fact, Tracy Banks is subject to federal prison because I know that terrorist name, and that's an intolerable level of facilitation. And anybody else like Tracy Banks that thinks you're going to gang stalk me in my face, you're already going to federal prison. You're already going. If you're foolish enough, like Tracy Banks is, as I call her name out, this fool comes into my presence for me to document her again. If you think you're going to do that and you're avoiding federal prison, you are as delusional because you're going to federal prison. I'm going to document every unlawful threat, especially while these demons have not given me my property. While I'm sleeping outside, understand you're going to be sleeping in a federal cell. You're going to prison. You're going to federal prison. And she's engaged in nothing other than monitoring. She's not talking about anything that matters. She's not talking about my property. She's not talking about my money that she stole, and she tried to have me gang stalked into a pine box, and she still hasn't turned it over. There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to talk about. And by the way, you're doing so while you're gang stalking. You're going to prison. You're gang stalking with these homosexual women. You're gang stalking with these demons, these companies. You're gang stalking with the police. You're gang stalking while I call your name out. There's no coincidences here, people. Pay attention. This is what the Ontario Police Department do. That's the same exact pattern. That's what the Ontario International Airport does. What's happening when I'm at 226 Vine Avenue just the other night? As I refer to what the Ontario International Airport does, while you see them doing U-turns on Euclid Avenue, they fly much more west to fly over my head on Vine Avenue. And as I describe that, what did the Ontario International Airport commit? A documented act of psychological torture, which is very foolish when you're being prosecuted. That same pattern or that same tactic, it doesn't work when you're being documented for a prosecution, meaning it's evidence that you're targeting. Not only evidence that you're targeting, but you're targeting while you're also keeping evidence of your targeting under surveillance. That's how you have that simultaneous, immediate engagement in what I'm describing. Now, that's a very sick psychopath. That's a bloodthirsty murderer. That's the same pattern. That's what the police do. That's what the fire department does. That's what the Ontario International Airport does. That's what the people of the state do as I document them, engaging in what is repeating that threat by this little pissant that's hiding in a bathroom stall stalking me and is a coward, okay? They're all cowards. But Tracy Banks, I want to be clear. This is documentation. She's going to federal prison. And the federal government should have already barred her from being in my presence. That's an unlawful threat that the federal government is going to be responsible for because there was never a lawful investigation in the first place. While the federal government sought to steal my property. That's, again, the removal and the federal imprisonment of Jason Isaac Fields. There was never a lawful investigation. And because you're having sex with her, your judgment is clouded, you're going to federal prison. I don't care about your irresponsible sexual activity resulting in HIV, and then you want to defame my character while you're trying to steal my property with this fake gang stalking mom because you're having sex with her and you're caught up in that. The entity's you're going to federal prison for that. And if anybody else, this is a warning because I said it already before. If you come into my presence, you're not giving me my money. The entity has not given me my property. If you're coming in my presence, we're not talking about anything outside of court. I'm not negotiating. You're still gang stalking. That's what I'm documenting. There will be no negotiations. But moreover, she's coming up talking about nothing that matters. She's not talking about how she stole my property and signed paperwork in order to steal what was bequeathed to me, what was left to me. That's not in her name. She's not Erica Spencer. She's nothing close to it. Will never be. But she's engaged in stealing my identity. That's why all these demons are gang stalking. That's some audacity right there. That's some audacity. These demons are out here gang stalking me, and it's her fault. It's because of her. And it's because of the state of California. That's some audacity right there. She's going to prison, though. And if anybody else thinks that they're delusional enough, like I said, Jason Isaac Fields, these are demons that are engaged in what is monitoring in the spirit. They're sitting up obsessing over my social media. They know everything that I've already published on the internet, and they know they're going to prison. Every single one. They know they're going to prison. And while Tracy's going to prison, guess what she's not going? Guess what? That black magic, that voodoo, those wishes and prayers for death of me, it's not going to touch me. While she has all these things impending for her, she's still not doing what she should have done a long time ago. Not stolen my house and property. Stealing my money, stealing my intellectual property that I'm creating right now. And she's pulling up talking about nonsense. Not talking about, here's your money and your property, here's your documents, so you can claim your property. Not doing any of that while the city of Ontario is gang stalking. This is an entity that's acting in concert while Tracy Banks is in my face. That's an impermissible threat. And she's been doing it for years. I documented her doing that in her apartment. I documented her on the roads and the highways. This is what I'm showing. This is an entity that's conspiring. She is conspiring my murder and stalking me, monitoring me in my face with the government. And the government does that. So when your mother is responsible for your murder, the government will give her the floor and they control the narrative stating that I killed myself, not her murdering me. And that's exactly what she planned to do. That's exactly what they conspired to do. And she's engaging in that criminal activity in my face. This is the same exact impunity that I'm talking about. You're going to prison. You're going to prison. And the impunity of the Ontario International Airport, stalking in plain view on video, that's exactly what I'm talking about. The impunity of the Ontario Police, I'm documenting every day. It's the same demonic spirit, though. These are psychopaths, and these psychopaths, they need the pain that they're going to suffer. They need that shame that they're going to experience. They need those intense repercussions. They need to be locked up. They need to be locked up and not getting out. They absolutely do. This is P.O.C. This is P.O.C. And it doesn't get any more clear than that. Tracy Banks, haven't spoken to this demon in months. Okay, I haven't contacted her. She doesn't have my phone number. Excuse me, I take that back. The entity is monitoring, and she does have my phone number, but she cannot call me except for admitting that you're a gang stalking demon. Because how did you get my number, Satan? Where'd you get it from? Because you're engaged in surveillance. The state knows where you are. You're changing your number. It's an illusion. You don't have any privacy. The entity knows my phone number, and so does Tracy Banks, but she's not going to call me, even though she rolled up like an idiot, like a fool right now, but she's not going to call my phone because she doesn't have that new number. I haven't given it to her, and for her to do that is her admitting that she's engaged in the very allegations that are against the state. And while Tracy Banks pulls up on me, as I refer to her, that's criminal activity of the state of California. Understand that. Understand how all that goes. All right, it's currently, again, 7:31 a.m. That's happening under the fake sun. I'm going to refer the video of the food festival on the same Euclid Avenue. On the opposite side of D Street, that's where C Street is. That's where the fake sun is rising right now, because the fake sun is setting on this same Euclid Avenue, on the opposite side of this same block, D Street, after 6 p.m., where the Ontario police are stalking right in my face. That's the entity that's conspiring your murder, that's gang stalking you, that's secretly threatening you, that's psychological torture, while they're doing so ostensibly by engaging in something related to their duties, not talking to you, okay? Clearly, by all appearances, not harassing you, not focusing on you. That's the entity's malice, and all of the fake sun and the engineered light in that specific environment, and the documented pattern of targeting and stalking with helicopter, the documented pattern of stalking using that entire department doing so in that specific environment is directly rebutting. It shows you the malice of the entity that conspires the murder of American citizens and conspicuously targets them in their face with regard to how this system of public corruption operates. The same street where the fake sun is setting. The same street where Omnitrans is gang stalking on the roads and the highways that you hear in the background, because there's no sun. While I've been sitting here speaking it's 7:32 a.m. and the fake sun is rising, it's been an hour and 32 minutes and the fake sun is not moving anywhere. Omnitrans, which represents the state of California, is gang stalking me even when I'm on the bus. That's how obsessed the state of California is. Anybody, including Tracy Banks, that's targeting me in the way that she just did, they all are. They've done so thousands of times. They're on video stalking with the possible light. They're on video stalking under the fake sun. They're on video stalking by the Ontario International Airport. That's fine. It's in federal court. They're waiting. They're the ones that are fearful of a raid. They're the ones that don't know when it's going to drop. They're the ones that don't know when it's going to happen. But they're still engaged in targeting further into murder, and that's the prosecution of the government. The government that sought to defame my character to get away with stealing. The government that's gang stalking me with the same demons like Tracy Banks and the rest of them, and I don't even know them, and they've engaged in criminal activity and tried to frame me for it. How do you know who I am, Erica Lorraine Spencer, and who hired you to commit criminal activity and try to frame me for it? Who hired you? It's the same state of California. It's Tracy Banks, her co-defendants. Tracy Banks, who rolls up moments after I recited her license plate and her name in that specific environment where I'm documenting this same street is where the fake sun is setting. Demons 73710Z3 30855B4, engaging in sexual violence all night long. Terrorism, and the government's going to be prosecuted for that, and the license plates that you listen to, they are sharing in that, and this is the entity that's going to be prosecuted as a community, as a city, as a county, as a state. All right, Omnitrans Public Transit, also engaged in the pattern of conduct, sexual violence, engaged in terrorism. This is a part of the state's use of the every company that's engaged in that pattern of conduct. 9NRF 969, 8GOG 385, SPKSI, GODZ Heart 2U 9AHD 798, 35390H1, 7NKP 054, 45247A4, that's West Coast Arborists, who you saw gang stalking under the afternoon fake sun at the library, and they're stalking under the fake sun at 7 in the morning. License, and they're also gang stalking with the city of Upland. I've documented them before. 10315S2, license 7YOB236, 9RPE221. And the fake sun moves as I move, which is proof that they are all stalking me. And they were all stalking all last night as well, removing my blanket because sex offenders want to look at your body while they sexually violate you, while they sit around engaging in voyeurism, while they are stalking and monitoring you as a population of mentally ill and sexually perverted psychopaths who are also engaged in what is lusting after your demise, your death. Those are the demons, and it includes license 49072A3, 8CTX654, and as the documentation also shows, Tracy Banks license 9HUZ740, license 9PCD214, Stalking at Euclid and E Street, 8YCL251, and so is Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue. I'm documenting the sunset at Starbucks, where the Ontario police are stalking on video with their vehicles and with helicopter, where the sun would not be at one address for 12 hours. Everybody at the drive-thru is stalking me, and the establishment Starbucks is stalking, as you're going to prosecute terrorists and prosecute corrupt companies like Starbucks. 8VKZ769 is stalking as well, and the entity has the fake sun over me, like I stated in the afternoon on Sunday. After 12 p.m., I'm at the same ARCO where it is right now. The fake sun is over me. ARCO is engaged in gang stalking with the city of Ontario that's stalking me with planes, while that fake sun shows who the entity is stalking, while it's deviating from an airport where no plane is taking off, maintaining flights like Alan D. WAPNER publishes as a terrorist that's actually using an airport to engage in murdering, psychologically torturing people. The airport's engaged in terrorism, as the Ontario International Airport has proven itself to be engaged in, because I could have said it, but they didn't have to corroborate it with the weight of evidence that I have. And it's impossible that the sun would 5 hours later be over the top of my head at the same address, but it is. And that's because where the entity is engaged in what is targeting the sky space, and that's proven through that specific environment. 7E63252, 9HSZ661. These are also sex offenders that are monitoring my vagina. Okay, they go home and live their lives. Again, the illusion that they create regarding normalcy in this entirely corrupt population full of sex offenders who are a threat to women and children, and they maintain family units while they're engaged in the satanic system regarding the conspiracy to murder as a population. License 6RHU255. And this is what, again, Tracy Banks is engaged in. This is how she's both a mother, which is a term of art. So I only mean with regard to what she has physically engaged in, which is giving birth, but that doesn't make you a mother, obviously. 8HLX139, stalked with impossible light. That's a demon that's stalking me. And the fake sun is here, proving that, okay? The fake sun's over my head in the afternoon. All right, the fake sun is documented here, setting where that same airport is flying, hovering over this same street as I walk out of this same Chevron, where Chevron is gang stalking. All right, this is a demon that's engaging in that, driving up and then backing up, while impossible lights all over the ground. And I'll show you the fake sun, where he's engaged in what is stalking in the path. This is a demon. All right, and he's targeting with Tracy Banks, P.O.C., targeting with the state of California and the business, Chevron. This is the city of Ontario, the state of California, P.O.C. Impossible light activity touching my legs when I'm walking into the building, which is impossible, while National Trench Safety is stalking by being inside of the Chevron to purchase something in order to cross path. That's how you're going to prosecute the businesses. And in addition to seeing the specific environment where the fake sun is rising and setting over you, where you're being terrorized with amplified noise inside of the store while Chevron is monitoring you, you're going to prosecute those businesses civilly and criminally. All right, P.O.C. And it's currently, that's 7:44 a.m. All right, it is currently 7:57 a.m. and you'll see an image uploaded to the Google Drive regarding Ontario Veterinary Hospital, which is a relevant position. They're gang stalking while the people of the state are stalking on behalf of the government at that venue with the entity that's stalking with impossible light activity. And the license plate, the sex offender that knows exactly who I am, which is why they are targeting with impossible light, doing so as an entity of sex offenders who are mentally ill, they're demon-possessed, and they're psychopathic, and they are also engaged in sexual violence while they go out of their way as demons to touch you with light that manifests out of nothing. This is what the entity does against American citizens that don't have any evidence to prove and don't know what they're subject to, and it is that which is relevant to psychological torture, and it's also sexually motivated, okay? You want to always touch. You want to stalk me in the bathroom. You want to keep my vagina under surveillance. You want to be around me. You want to watch me in the nude and an indisposed state. You want to do that while you obsessively stalk and harass and terrorize me. These are the demons that are sexually gratified, that are satiated by inflicting such psychological torture and sexual violence without your knowledge and consent. And also, while I'm documenting with my knowledge and still engaging in it, 8AKL940 is a demon stalked with impossible light. 8DFZ171, license plate. 8ZUA657, engaging in surveillance at the Ontario Veterinary Hospital, located at 121. I think this is 121 East C Street. Yeah. This is P.O.C. The entity is stalking while I am well, they're always stalking, but right now I'm uploading the evidence onto the Google Drive, and that's also relevant to a sex offender, a predator. That's, again, hostile. This is what the entity was doing all night long, because they're being prosecuted, because you're going to prison, because you're being disbanded, because you're being identified, because you're actually stalking me, and you are actually a sex offender who engages in what is not only sitting up and observing and stalking and monitoring my vagina, looking at it, observing it, obsessing over it, capturing it, and putting it on the internet unbeknownst to me. That's actually what you do as a whole entity, and you're angry and hostile and aggressive toward me. That's a psychopath. That's a sexually perverted psychopath that's engaged in the conspiracy to commit murder. That's the U.S. government. That's the state of California. Okay, this is what Tracy Banks is inflicting upon her own family member. Eric Spencer inflicting upon his own family member. Jason Isaac feels this demon isn't even relevant. I don't even know if he has family, but he's intricately engaged in what's concerning my family, having sex with all of them and everybody else and their mother. And the entity's engaging in this is criminal conduct that he's engaged in to date, right now. I'm documenting Jason Isaac Fields, who was going to federal prison. While this criminal conduct, I'm still suffering damages based on the criminal conduct of Jason Fields and Tracy Banks and Eric Spencer and all the rest of those demons, okay? While the city of Ontario acts as an entity, the state acts as an entity, okay? License 9KJN360 and the Ontario Fire, sharing in what is, again, the demonic pattern of conduct while they're monitoring on ARCO Wi-Fi. ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue has the fake sun over me right here, where it's also over me in the middle of the afternoon, like I documented on Sunday after 12 p.m., where the Ontario Fire Department is also stalking me then, okay? The demons are getting in vehicles associated with the city and the county to come around and stalk little old me, and they're also obsessed with my vagina. And that's why Michael Gerken and that entire Ontario Fire Department is being exposed as terrorists who are violent sex offenders engaged in terrorism. And they did so, Michael Gerken does so, because he is exposed as a terrorist. It's no longer a secret, but also you need to know because he's demon possessed, and that's informing his mental illness, which is proven through his criminal pattern of conduct committed as a department. All right, it is currently 8:01 a.m. This is another demon of the Ontario Veterinary Hospital that engages in repeating those acts of violence while they are monitoring the evidence. Okay, these are homosexual women that then go into the Ontario Veterinary Hospital carrying a black cat. They are still demons engaging in that sexual violence. I just want to document that. This is what the demons engage in, and they're doing so regarding what is a specific environment. The sun is never going to be rising and setting over your veterinary hospital clinic, regardless of whether you're carrying little kittens where you want to look like you're some compassionate, you're a demon. And you're obsessed with my vagina, you're also a homosexual, and the public needs to know that, and I documented those license plates for your convenience. It is currently 8:01 a.m. They're targeting with the Ontario Fire Department. They're targeting with the rest of these demons pacing around with engineered lights. 4WDM278, 5HQT981, and they're all monitoring on the venue of the internet. This is Title 18 federal stalking. P.O.C. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and recite the video where I am at the same ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue on Sunday afternoon, where the entities engage in conduct where you're carrying a little kitty into the veterinary hospital. That kitty's not a demon-possessed gang stalker like you, so the demons try to hide behind what they're holding, some sort of prop. See, I'm holding a broom. I'm a janitor. I'm sleeping. I'm not a demon. I'm not gang stalking you. Oh, see, I'm driving a fire truck. I'm not a demon. I'm not gang stalking you. I'm not a sex offender. I'm holding a little kitty. I work at a veterinary hospital. I'm not a demon. I'm not stalking you. The entity is proven to be engaging in that, and I want to refer to the video that I captured on Sunday where the fake sun is at the same address in alignment to me. That's speaking out to what is the only person that's being targeted, and that is myself. The entity is keeping a fake sun on Euclid Avenue in alignment to me, and 9, 10, 11, 4 hours from now in a natural environment were these homosexuals that went into the Ontario Veterinary Hospital not gang stalking in furtherance of murder of a woman that they both want to be and whose vagina that they're obsessed with and who they're stalking and keeping under surveillance as demons. If that were not the case, then the sun would not be here like I documented 4 hours from now. Okay, in a natural environment, that doesn't exist. And by the way, the sun is never going to be in Florida where these homosexuals are stalking with impossible light because they want to touch me that bad. Okay, the entities engaged in this, and what I documented on Sunday is captured at 12. Let me read that video to you. 12:34 p.m. And while these demons are pacing, stalk with impossible light, look at that video captured on September 14, 2025, where the entity is stalking with the Ontario Police right now in the parking lot, and they're doing so pursuant to knowledge of being documented, me documenting the people. This is what they do by helicopter activity. And at 12:34 p.m., you'll see the people of the state stalking with impossible light activity as well on the sidewalk. Okay, this is that entity that's engaging in that. And Ontario Police license plate 1591756. That's a white male. All right, he looks like a prepubescent, is a demon. Vehicle 1027. He's driving adjacent, in alignment to me at the Ontario Veterinary Hospital at 8:04 a.m. He's a little skinny neck, long nosed demon, white male, engaged in gang stalking, driving a vehicle. That's federal prison, okay? And the demons, I want to be clear that at gang stalking, this is how an entity engages in that. Oh, all of a sudden you see the police and that's supposed to that's where you're going to be understanding the people of the state that you're documenting. That's federal prison, okay? But this is the entity engaging in that same P.O.C. And on September 14th, I'm at the same address where Ontario police are stalking, where the demons, homosexuals at the veterinary hospital, and they're gay and they're hostile to being exposed as gay. Their conduct is what makes them gay, not me. If you're gay, then be gay. But you're not going to be gay and target me, and I'm not going to say anything about it. You're stalking a woman. You're obsessed and monitoring my vagina. All right? You're doing what's touching me with light that's not even naturally occurring because you want to touch me that bad. You're a homosexual. Okay, so you're engaging in that and you're doing so while the police are gang stalking with you because you're hostile, because you're a homosexual that perhaps isn't ready to expose that. You're a demon and everybody knows that because you're learning, in other words, that spirit of homosexuality is of Satan. Okay, and that's what's reaching out to me, touching me with impossible light while that demon possessed female is monitoring. And I just want to be clear, demons are obviously engaged in the services for veterinary services because they're all engaged in congregating and gaining up at the Ontario Veterinary Hospital, and they're gang stalking. Okay? They're gang stalking. They're at the same venue, by the way, across the street at Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue, where the entity is keeping a fake son. Ontario police are kidnapping at Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue at 7:15 a.m., and yet the fake son is remaining at the same venue, not going anywhere. And that's how you know, again, Ontario police are gang stalking after 6 p.m., like I documented, at the food festival on this same street. And the Ontario police committing kidnapping at this Starbucks at 507, the same venue, the same location of the Ontario Veterinary Hospital. The Ontario police are going to federal prison for kidnapping. And this little pipsqueak driving an Ontario police vehicle, it looks no more than 22, okay? So acne on his face, braces on his teeth, and is engaged in what is gang stalking. He's a sex offender, and he joined the Ontario police to engage in criminal activity. That's why they're being disbanded. Okay, and they share an obsession with my vagina. And that's why Impossible Light is coming backwards while they're driving by me, because they're obsessed with me. The light activity is the personification of their obsession with me. It's the tangible evidence of you're looking at them stalking and being obsessed with me. And they're also obsessed while I'm documenting ongoing harassment by homosexuals like those inside of the Ontario Veterinary Hospital. Stalking all night long, okay? And on September 14, 2025 at 12:34 p.m., that video is published on a website, on the YouTube channel, and on my website. This is the P.O.C.wordpress.com for all of the evidence on September 14th. The entity is engaged in what is keeping the fake sun. It's over the top of my head. It's 8 a.m. right now. So 9, 10, 11, 4 hours now, the sun is going to be at the same address. Not only at the same address, it's over the top of my head at the same address. That's how you know that this demon is a stalker. 8 VAY 491, okay? That's how you know that, number one, that that's a demon, and that's how you know that that demon is stalking me specifically. And that demon acts as the entity. That's why the Ontario International Airport is miles away from the airport in the first place, hovering in the sky space where the fake sun's over me 4 hours from now, stalking in commercial planes. Okay? And that's the entity engaging in what is obvious and widely exposed terrorism. Terrorism that Alan D. WAPNER doesn't care anything about being exposed. And that's okay, because you're being removed from office. And you're also being appropriately identified as a violent sex offender. Violent sex offender. Okay? License 6DCV291. Okay? Drove by, I read that license plate, that demon's just sitting next to me. You heard that ignition? Because they're sitting there stalking. Wants to be next to me. Okay? P.O.C. That's another homosexual. Yeah, that's a homosexual woman, a Latina one. The gang stalkers that are engaging in the pattern of conduct with the government are going to be deported, okay? And immigrants are not only Latinos. Immigrants are African. Immigrants are Haitian, Jamaican. Immigrants are Salvadorian. Immigrants are of every creed, those that are not natural born. And also, because the entity is engaged in terrorism, you're engaged in criminal activity, whether you're here legally or not. So you are thus here illegally, and your impending deportation is going to be upon my documenting and the federal government, namely the Homeland Security, that has a whole other lawful basis to ship you out of here because you're not welcome. And get ready because you're getting deported. All right? And this is the entity that's engaging in that conduct with the government. Stalking with Impossible Light, stalking by this pipsqueak driving an Ontario Police Department vehicle, doing so under the fake sun that's still here as I documented on video, September 14, 2025 at 12:34 p.m. That's the entity proven to be targeting. And that's the entity that's unintelligent, engaged in molesting me with Impossible Light because they're violent sex offenders who are obsessed with me. Their obsession is because they are demons. I can't prove it. The evidence doesn't get any clearer to you. Okay, their obsession is because they're demons. Their mental illness, their psychopathic illnesses is because they're demons. Their criminal activity is because they're demons. The corruption of the government is because it's filled with demons. All right, you got demons working at the veterinary hospital. They're demons. So if you associate good people with those that work with animals, that is a very shallow and inaccurate assessment of one's character. Satan calls itself a pastor in church. Look at Paul Leon. Okay? The entity is engaging in what is the pattern of conduct as a whole society. And there are plenty of demons in positions that pose a threat. It's not because they're there and they should be and that they belong there that it has anything to do with their true character. Gang stalking mother, that's antithetical to nature. How do you have that? Because she's a demon. And I've also proven that through the evidence. Stalking with impossible light, that's only the conduct of a demon. That's Satan operating over that person, and Satan has caused that person to suffer a federal prosecution. 8RZU003. But it's of their own volition. They decide to target a federal prosecutor. They decide to be captured on video and on podcast saying anything to me, including that you're going to F me up. That was the entity speaking. And that entity is going to be prosecuted. Stalking with impossible light, 8RZU003, with a teenage daughter in the passenger seat, teaching that youth how to be a homosexual, a covert homosexual, stalking another woman with her gay mother. Okay, that's the reality of when females are stalking other women, obsessing over their bodily fluids, consuming them in sex rituals with demon-possessed men while they practice this witchcraft and then gang stalk people. That's what the state of California is engaged in. That's how they call themselves sacrificing. And what they're actually engaged in is mentally ill, sick behavior. That's why they're not able to associate reality and identify the fact that you're being prosecuted. This isn't like you did before. In the time before that, you're being prosecuted now. They're not able to connect those dots because they're already they're gone. These people are dead. Okay? It's currently 8:11 a.m. and the evidence is uploading onto the Google Drive. You will access today's documentation, September 16, 2025, and it is tying right into the all-night sex fest. The demons engaging in sexual contact with me, touching my buttocks, touching my body, touching any part of me, 9FKZ291, without my consent and knowledge. Doing so while I'm in an unconscious state, just like a rapist, okay? Doing so because they want to touch all over my body with light, okay? The entity removing my covering. I'm sleeping with a blanket on, and I'm waking up, the blanket's on the floor. I'm not removing my blanket. The demons want to look at me while they stalk me. They want to be in the bathroom next to me while I'm nude, while my vagina is exposed. They want to make noise in that bathroom space while they know it's exposed. They're sex offenders, and they're the most sick kind. A kind that you have to make up terms in order to encapsulate the sickness and the sexual perversion behind them monitoring in sexually perverted ways, like what is bathroom monitoring. 9LVE894, and a whole police department is going to be disbanded for that sexual violence. Oh, you're not remaining as a police department. You're a whole other type of sick that needs to be identified in a federal prosecution. And such terrorists that are engaged in that predatory conduct, you're being disbanded. Okay? It's currently 8:12 a.m. This is P.O.C. at 434 North Euclid Avenue. All right, 8:20 a.m. Ontario International Airport, stalking, flying in perfect alignment with me at the, let me go ahead and take a
stalking
picture
police
of that.
officers in the United
Screenshot
States.
of
It's
it.
domestic terrorism.
While I'm reviewing
And the
video,
opportunity
like you can hear in the
which
background, the entity is flying in perfect alignment with me, stalking at the, I'm going to take a screenshot of it. I have a lot on the image, but, excuse me, in the image I have to take a screenshot. But you will see if you zoom into it, the entity is stalking by plane, flying in alignment over the same venue. Oh, let me also take a screenshot of where the fake sun is. Wow, showing you who they're all stalking. And these demons that are on what is E Street are all stalking. They're all obsessed with my vagina as well. All of them. 6UYL297, 8JXY667, 99443X2. All of them engaged in stalking with the airport that's maintaining flights, doing U-turns. Remember, they're not going over Euclid Avenue doing a U-turn. They fly to where I'm at ARCO, on the opposite side of the street where they were earlier this morning, being foolish, doing that on video, and concentrating, in other words, where I'm located, where my person is located, and then making a U-turn when in alignment with my person. That's also showing its targeting period because no arrivals, no landings or takeoffs from the airport is going to include any of this obvious targeting that the terrorist, the Ontario International Airport is engaging in. And it's also speaking to what's not published on the website, because when you are landing, coming from New York, and you're landing at the Ontario International Airport, I guarantee you, when you're on that flight, they're not making some detour and hovering over an apartment building and then making a U-turn and then continuing their flight to land at the Ontario International Airport. And in the same way, when you're getting on planes and you're flying out to Philadelphia, they're taking off from the airport and then they're flying out into the city and hovering over the apartment complex, and then engaging in what is rising up again after they've already taken off from the airport, and then continuing going on along with your flight to Philadelphia, or your flight to Sacramento, or your flight to Texas, or wherever you're going. The Ontario International Airport is engaged in terrorism. The airport itself is just a cover for what is terrorism, stalking using planes. And it's a national security threat while that airport remains in operation. It's going to be shut down because it's nothing other than a criminal operation. It's nothing other than a criminal operation. The use of the airport, Delta Airlines, and them selling flights to destinations is supposed to be the cover. That's the business that they're engaged in, while their actual purpose is surveillance. And what I'm showing you, gang stalking pursuant to surveillance, while these companies, these airlines, the airport, the city of Ontario is engaged in organized crime, surveilling American citizens that they want to sacrifice, murder. And that's why you have the absurdly demented pattern of conduct of stalking me using planes. The Ontario International Airport, it shall be shut down. The federal government is going to target terrorism like that. And I want to be clear, when you're engaged in criminal activity using the means of an airport, that airport is not indispensable and clearly not even needed. It's actually not a legitimate even use for the city or the state, because they're devoted to criminal activity. They have so many planes. I'm talking I've documented it. Every 37 seconds, another plane, another plane, another plane. Okay, so you have a whole other set of people that must be devoted to maintaining the business cover for the airport, and then the entities maintaining ongoing surveillance of me. You're going to shut down what is the airport because its actual purpose is surveillance and murder and psychological torture. And this is what airlines and what the states are doing throughout. Remember, the airport is nothing other than a function of the government that's engaged in stalking and monitoring and terrorizing American citizens. They murder them. Terrorism by flying into a helicopter is not an accident. In the same way that they are flying at a very detailed knowledge about what they do as they do it. You're not having any, no, they're not. They're engaged in murdering people. You need to know that. They're sacrifice, their demons, their term is sacrificing onto Satan. For money, for power, influence, okay? And they do this as a tribute to, again, a false god who has a limited amount of time, who's getting a lot of people in trouble, who's going on to the next group of people that he can use up and deceive. 9EEG 969. Stalking as a customer at Chevron, and Chevron is also stalking. 9EJC 589. It is currently 8:24 a.m. and you're reminding 12:34 p.m. The sun wouldn't be at the same parking lot, the same place where it is right now, over me at ARCO. And not only is it at the same place, it's over me at the same place, which is how you know an airport is stalking me, which is how you know a bunch of people are stalking. And these people have a very specific, uncanny ability to have light just shooting out like lasers, dragging across buildings, shooting across at night with your headlight. No, they're demons, and they're demon possessed. And the demon possessed have supernatural ability, the demons that are in them. You're not looking at normal people. You're looking at the physical. You see a picture of me, you see my eyes, my lips, my face, my hair. You see me in flesh and blood. But the demon possessed, there is a demonic spirit in them, and that's what gives them ability to drive by and engineer light moves all across my person at the same time. They are indeed demon possessed, and that's not different. The entire Ontario Police Department, they're all demon possessed. That's very scary when you're looking at those that are in law enforcement and they are engaged in this same conduct, that same uncanny ability, stalking with light, monitoring your physical movement, concerned with your genitalia, and they don't want you to know anything about that. Any of it, that they're stalking, they don't want you to know anything about their demon possession. But they are, and it is, okay? This is P.O.C. It's 8:25 p.m. And the uploads are complete on the Google Drive for today. Well, not complete. I'm going to continue documenting today, but for what I've documented so far, thus far, and the entity is monitoring all that. This is criminal activity by Alan D. Wapner. He's engaged in criminal activity. I'm documenting him by name. I'm documenting the airport, everybody working. They're all engaged in federal stalking. It's a federal RICO case, and Alan D. Wapner is a criminal, just so that you know that. He's a criminal. So are those that are represented by every airline. They're criminals. This is criminal activity, and this criminal activity is because they're trying to commit murder. They're trying to get engaged in a murder. And it's a murder that they're not even going to accomplish, because they're not going to be in federal court stating that, because there's no denying they're going to be prosecuted. And so what's the purpose? Why were you stalking in the first place? Because it's not just for funsies. You were doing this because you intended on committing murder. You're a criminal. You're a criminal and you're a murderer, and you've murdered other people before. That's what you need to know about Alan D. Wapner. That's what you need to know about that airport that needs to be shut down immediately. All right, it's currently 8:26 a.m. This is P.O.C. Stalking with Impossible Light, license 5JQP022. The demons are concentrating presence by stalking in alignment to me by just going to ARCO and parking on the sidewalk. This is the significance of corrupt businesses that are engaged in surveillance. This is what I mean. The cities that are engaged in surveillance, the state that's engaged in surveillance, where they place specific businesses, it's a strategic with regard to positioning surveillance. So you're parking on the side with the entity that's stalking by the Ontario police. That little pipsqueak is going to federal prison, okay? The entity is engaged in the pattern of conduct while you're maintaining a 24-hour drive-through for the bank at the corner, while you're maintaining a Starbucks with a 24-hour drive-through, or drive-through open until 11 and 12 a.m. The entity is engaged in what is stalking at this ARCO at 12 a.m. with this same Ontario police that are stalking with the Ontario Veterinary Hospital. I read their license plates. They're inside engaged in stalking. That's federal prison again, while the Ontario police is targeting me with them. License plate 5VSF 8B3. And the entity is doing so while I'm documenting and identifying to you what is the fake sun that's over me on September 14, 2025 at 12:34 p.m. The same street where the fake sun and that same department using helicopter activity, and the fake sun still in alignment to me on the same street out of everybody, out of every location. Same location, same person, Euclid Avenue, stalking with helicopter. 9E ZK258. 8G56214. And these are demons that are conspiring murder, and when they get caught engaging in that, they engage in the same pattern. And that's those are the sex offenders that are demon possessed that are being disbanded. And they were engaged in molesting me all night long. They were engaged in removing my blanket so they could stare at my buttocks, so they could stare at my face while I'm in an unconscious state, and they're just ritually pacing all around me, stalking all night long, molesting with impossible light activity. These are the demons that are stalking as a whole demon possessed police department, and they don't help Chevron, they don't help the veterinary hospital, they don't help ARCO, Starbucks, they don't help the entity that's gang stalking as the entire city. They certainly don't help Alan D. Wapner. They don't help the gang stalking airlines. They don't help SAMI'S Regis Group, the Downtown Ontario Luxury. They're not helping any of them. And the demons at the OVITT Family Community Library, the demons at Economy Inn, the demons at Starbucks, they committed kidnapping, and Tracy Banks that committed kidnapping with that agency. They're all going to prison, just so that you know that. They're all going to federal prison. 1624600, the demons of the city of Ontario, they're engaged in federal stalking, an operation of their device while they cross paths with light activity, creating impossible light activity, and they're doing so under the fake sun, and they engage in what is harassment and terrorism in that environment, monitoring me, which is the removal of Paul Leon, while they maintain amplified audible activity, thunderous noise throughout the whole city, while those demons that don't have any sort of expertise or skill set, so they're still engaged in criminal activity when all their job needs to be is emptying the trash, and they can't do that without engaging in sexual violence and terrorism. Those are the demons that are doing so under the corruption of the city of Ontario. Okay, it's currently 8:30 a.m. This is P.O.C. You're mindful of everybody that's going to federal prison, including those of the Ontario Police and those that kidnap with the Ontario Police, because this is the system that they're engaged in. All right, that's the pattern of conduct, and that's the entity that's, again, harming itself, especially when you come for what's the federal prosecutor. And what does a demon-possessed psychopath that is already mentally ill do? More obvious conduct like stalking in a helicopter, where I have you doing the same thing 12 hours later, and the fake sun hasn't gone anywhere, and there's a body of evidence showing a plethora of corrupt law enforcement agencies doing the same thing, which is not a coincidence, especially in an environment where the sun doesn't go anywhere. License plate. An Asian male, 7TGF122, if that's an immigrant, you deport. Deport. License 8SZB998, engaging in what is terrorism with the gang stalking government that encourages terrorism, and that's also why the Ontario Police represents what is a harm to the public, and they're being disbanded, not just for kidnapping me, but because they are more damage to society than they are a benefit. Okay? That's P.O.C. It's currently 8:31 a.m. The Ontario Police, as you already know, they're engaged in federal stalking. So they're monitoring on the ARCO Wi-Fi. They're monitoring while I'm documenting the people of the state. They're monitoring with the intent to obstruct justice. They're monitoring somebody that has already prosecuted them, and they're going to be put in federal prison. So L. Edwards and C. Torres, L. Martinez, B. Hook, Alex Escobar, A. Quesada. You have C. Hazelwood and Owens. They're all going, all of them. They're all going to federal prison, and there's no argument that they have in court. And obviously, they don't intend on having one. So this is an entity that's already forfeited any sense of legitimacy. What are you going to say to a federal judge that's been watching you being documented on the internet the whole time, and then you're going to be in court? You're going to prison. Just so that you know that, you're going to federal prison. It's currently 8:32 a.m. This is P.O.C. All right, molesting is 5NTP086. That's a sex offender driving a white SUV. Another sex offender engaging in surveillance, just like the other demon in the van, coming and parking. These are the sex offenders that are molesting me, stalking, monitoring my vagina. It's pathetic. 7B57916, that's a predator, a Latino male. These demons are obsessed with me. They really are. He's coming and parking behind me, just sitting next to me. That's exactly what the other demon did. And that's exactly what the other demon did, doing so in front of me on the sidewalk. And as soon as I document that, the Ontario police that are stalking the whole time with the demons that are equally obsessed with me, engage in what is stalking in a helicopter. Just in a means where I'm perceiving it, which I use to document, because they're stalking. And that's what they're doing when they're in my face and calling themselves engaged in what is nothing other than criminal summing. They're gang stalking with the people. That's what I'm documenting at Starbucks, at Economy N. That's what I'm documenting when the entity is engaged in what is harassing me, because they are being documented gang stalking me, and they're going to prison. These demons are engaged in heavy duty stalking, and they were doing this all night long, removing my blanket so they could stare at my body while they are stalking me all night long. Okay? This is P.O.C. The entity is monitoring. It's published online right now. It's 8:39 a.m. The Ontario Police monitoring at this same ARCO at 12 o'clock in the morning is what I documented. And I also put on the internet every license plate, those that are, if that's relevant to federal prison, they need to be specifically documented as terrorists threatening my life with the gang stalkers that use vehicles and bear weapons and stalk me in helicopters to communicate an unlawful threat with regard to their intent to commit murder. LOPROS is stalking, and in doing so at 434 North Euclid Avenue as a means of stalking in the path. That demon that I'm documenting, that license, he's parking behind me engaging in surveillance. The demon before that, parking behind me, and all they're doing is stalking. It's not about ARCO. That's why the fake sun is over me. That's why they have these corrupt businesses, and the city of Ontario is engaged in surveillance. That's why the airport has planes hovering over here. There's no planes taking off from the airport over here. And there's no sun that will be over me at 8 o'clock, 7 in the morning, and 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and 6 o'clock in the evening. And I'm reminding you about that when I am publishing the video today captured at 7:02 a.m. Okay, this is with the same ARCO Chevron where I'm at 6:47 p.m. and the fake sun is here while the Ontario International Airport is stalking, just like the Ontario Police is stalking. And so is 9AMW028. Ridiculous light activity all behind their car coming back towards me. That's a demon that's stalking me. They're obsessed with me. This Satan that fills them is obsessed with me, and I'm going to prosecute them for stalking. And they are stalking to commit murder. And they are acting in the shoes of the government. LOPROS on the surveillance cameras at Chevron at 506 North Euclid Avenue. It's 8:40 a.m. It's criminal activity. It's public corruption. You're going to prosecute Chevron, Starbucks, ARCO, the Ontario Veterinary Hospital. Every business is engaged in surveillance. And this is ARCO engaged in terrorizing me with the police. This is Chevron engaged in terrorizing me with the police. You already know that Starbucks is engaged in terrorizing me with the police. And they're doing so while they commit kidnapping as well. Ocean's going to prison. Ocean, Amelia, Pat, everybody that's documented July 4th engaging in criminal summoning, they're going to federal prison. It's as simple as that. That is straight and no mystery whatsoever. You're going to prison for terrorism in the United States. You're going to prison, okay? It is currently 8:41 a.m. and the entity is stalking me at this same intersection at 4:47 p.m. That's what I was reminding you about when I was at Fontana Lewis Library. And the entity had the fake sign outside of the library window in alignment to me in another city, where the entity is setting the fake sign at the food festival on Saturday night, however, at 6 o'clock. So when is it going to be in Fontana at 11 over my head and still at 3 over my head, and then through the window of the Fontana Lewis Library off of Spring Street at the same time that the airport is stalking by plane as I walk out of this same Chevron where the fake sign is still here 9 hours later, 10 hours later. Yeah, it's not the natural environment. And that's the entity that is so surrounded by evidence, but they are so committed to committing murder and psychological torture that a federal court knows all about. That's why you're being disbanded. You know that, and you must be prepared for it. You must have already, but what's going to change is that the federal government is not going to permit this terrorism. They're not going to permit this like they've done before, and I'm going to prosecute for that. But they're not going to permit what the Ontario police are doing, what the people of the state are doing. You're not going to permit this for years and on. And even at this point, you're talking about on a daily basis, you're not going to permit this. At any moment, an American citizen's life is to be taken because I am the exception. But that doesn't mean I'm entitled to less protection because I am the exception. I'm going to prosecute for this. But the Ontario police, they're paying by disbanding. Mike LORENZ is done with law enforcement. And everybody needs to know in the country that he's an enemy of the United States. And he hates this country. And that's why he joined law enforcement to be a terrorist, to be a sex offender, to get engaged in criminal activity and get away with it and enable other people to act with him and protect other criminals and predators. The exact opposite of why you take an oath and join law enforcement. That's exactly why Satan engages in that field. And that's what Mike LORENZ represents, a threat to this country. Okay, it is currently 8:43 a.m. and all of this is being published on YouTube as well. And then following is going to be the podcast, which I'm capturing now, and then I'm going to publish it. All right, this is P.O.C. It is 8:47 a.m. That is Southwest Airlines, and there is absolutely no flight published as an arrival to the airport at 8:47 a.m. nor at 8:47 a.m. as departure. Southwest Airlines is scheduled at 8:15 a.m. going to Oakland and doing so from gate 406 at 8:35 a.m. Flight number WN2408 going to Phoenix from gate 403. 9:25 a.m. Southwest Airlines is scheduled. Flight WN3957 to San Jose. But there's nothing that is scheduled that's published, however. But this is, again, the entity that is, and Southwest Airlines is also a gang stalker, as is the Ontario International Airport, where the fake sun is over me at 8:48 a.m., where Southwest Airlines is stalking, as you can hear that plane, flying over me in a relevant position where this sex offender, a demon, is stalking with data and power as a commercial vehicle with license 44539D3. Doing so while they're stalking with all manner of impossible light while the airport is engaged in demonic means of surveillance, 9ULE889, and they're all doing so because this is the desperate act that they commit while I'm still going to publish the podcast. But this is what they do, and this is how they engage in prosecuting themselves. They do the work for me. These are mentally ill psychopaths who committed a lot of murders. They've engaged in a lot of sex crimes. They've engaged in a lot of thievery, and they don't know what to do when they're being exposed for it other than engage in more of that criminal activity, which is resulting in what is necessary. Southwest Airlines to be removed as a gang stalking and corrupt airline, a third-party company that's engaged in sacrificing, that is terrorizing American citizens. And that's why it's doing so, flying in a manner that has nothing to do with the published arrivals and departures. It's operating outside of those published arrivals and departures. And it's also doing so not only because it's not on the website, but because it doesn't include hovering over this parking lot, which is also happens to be within a pattern of conduct where the fake sun is present. And the fake sun is here both in the afternoon at 12:34 in the afternoon and at 6:45 in the evening, where that same airport is stalking, which the evidence shows. And you'll see that in the video captured today, September 16, 2025. Refer to it and look at the related content, because I'm capturing videos at the same location where the fake sun is rising today. And across the street is this ARCO, where the same airport, that's a terrorist that's engaging in stalking with these sex offenders, homosexual women that are demon-possessed, gang stalking, and also the demon-possessed predators. The demon-possessed women don't mind males preying upon women as long as they're the targeted individual. These are the hypocrites that stand up in movements that are so-called Me Too movements. Many of them are demons that are gang stalkers, and they're homosexual women that will target other women while they want to maintain campaigns about men that they want to refer to as predators. This is hypocrisy. Just putting it to you within that context. In California, they're engaged in what is sexual violence as males and females against the targeted individual, which is okay as long as it's that person. But it's okay, you're a predator when you're violating their child or the neighbor's kids. The entity has a whole other alternate universe where they're engaging in sexual violence together, however, and that's what you need to be aware of, while these homosexual women are stalking me with males that are predators as well. Just so that you know that. And the entity that knows and is triggered by that is stalking by the same Ontario Police Department, where the Ontario International Airport has no published flights and where no flights are going to be occurring outside of the P.O.C. and doing so while they're monitoring evidence. And that's the entity that's, again, the airport's being removed, the police are being removed, the people of the state, many of them are going to federal prison, they're being removed. And they're, again, triggered by the truth of what I'm speaking. And you know why? Because they're keeping me under surveillance as well. It's the ongoing admission to that. Jason Isaac Fields and Tracy Banks are on the top of the list of those going to prison. Okay, they engaged in kidnapping with that agency and then sat in courts defaming me with that agency. And that agency is very foolish because they're proving what Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields are and what they were doing in the first place. Because those demons of that agency are highly imprudent. They're psychopaths that lack self-control. All right, and that lack of self-control helps me establish the pattern of conduct. 8MD5555. Psychopath, stalking with impossible light while the demons fly over my head again by helicopter. And they do so. Listen to what I'm talking about. And the demons are triggered by the truth of what it is that I'm describing. They know that they're homosexuals. They know that they're obsessed with my vagina. Or they just don't like to hear it. And what they don't like to hear while they're engaged in criminal surveillance, they admit that they're engaging in that by flying over the top of my head, by stalking me in a supernatural environment, which I took the time to document so that you would know what Satan is doing and how you prosecute Satan. All right, it's 8:52 a.m. This is P.O.C. That's the Ontario Police Department again. By helicopter, you're documenting a pattern. It's under the fake sun. They're being disbanded. It's over. Mike Lorenz, it's over. And this is P.O.C. Am I missing something? Oh, that's the Ontario Police, listen. And Body Armor is also gang stalking. That's a corrupt company. Providing a delivery to Chevron is light activity, relevant positioning, and a demon stalking with noise under the fake sun. And this is because they're all scared because I'm about to publish the podcast. And publish the podcast, I absolutely am. It's 8:53 a.m. The demons that engage in criminal activity and are fearful of it, they commit more and more criminal activity. And then what do? I hold my camera out and I document it. The engineer light, look at the light dragging across the asphalt. That's not sunlight, ladies and gentlemen. These are demons, and they're also, this is fear. This is what they do when they're scared. Okay, this is what they do when they're scared. That's also what they do when they're celebrating targeting somebody. And it's all unlawful conduct. Psychological torture, sexual violence, a demon, that's a psychopath that's stalking and further into murder, stalking with light, monitoring, 26455U1. And these are all the businesses as well, okay? P.O.C. I'm gonna just go ahead and keep recording because the entity is doing that while I'm publishing the podcast. This is evidence of, and it's all under the fake sun at 434 North Euclid Avenue. All right, this is P.O.C. License 8SMG308. That's an aged demon, Latina, double chin, engineer light, stalking me with engineer light while she's driving by me, stalking me. A fat homosexual woman that I would never let touch me, and she also doesn't have a right to touch me while she's stalking with the Ontario Police. And she's worthy of deportation if she's not even a natural-born citizen and been given the privilege to be here. But that privilege is revoked upon terrorism, okay? And she should be focused on her chins, but instead she's out stalking a woman that will call you and your homosexuality and your sexual violence out immediately. I will call it out, okay? It is currently 8:54 a.m. That's the Ontario Police that's stalking by helicopter. And then demons pacing all around me, cockroaches with engineer light under a fake sun. A fake sun that's still here at the same ARCO at 12:34 in the afternoon like I documented on Sunday. At 6:45 in the evening like I documented, I believe that was September 6th. It's on YouTube. And I am currently publishing the podcast, so I'll go ahead and give you that timestamp right now, actually. On September 8th, 2025 at 6:45, the same ARCO. License 9GXM013. Alrighty. And this is all demons do. They engage in the same cycle over and over and over again because that's their P.O.C, 8FJB355. And within the P.O.C is the government's conspiracy to murder somebody. Part of that conspiracy is to cover it up. And so then you engage in what is stalking me by a helicopter because you're trying to intimidate me out of documentation so I can't blow the whistle, so I can't expose where I'm being targeted by the police who are trying to murder me, who are trying to corner me somewhere and set me up to take my life for harm. That's obstruction, and that's a whole other basis for prison. 4MZP906. That's what they do while they're stalking with impossible light. Doing so, oh, she's published the broadcast. Even more demons come around with this impossible light. The fake sun gets even brighter and brighter. And the impossible light becomes more radiant, more spectacular. The helicopter activity becomes more prevalent, longer, like 11 minutes stalking me by helicopter, like I documented the night before last. The entity that's stalking by helicopter at the ARCO, this same ARCO at 12 o'clock in the morning for 45 minutes, like I documented. The entity stalking like you're listening to this morning, repeatedly stalking by helicopter. And it's stalking because this is where the fake sun is. The sun isn't staying on some street in one city all day long. 8JIV 177, P.O.C. They're all engaged in federal stalking on the ARCO network, by the way, on the internet. This is federal stalking that's clearly underway. Let me get you body armor. That's gang stalking with Chevron, with the Ontario Police Department, with Chevron, the corporation, body armor itself, and that's also driven by a Coca-Cola truck. I've documented Coca-Cola, 4SM5722. Okay, that's a male, perhaps a Latino male, maybe a Caucasian male, gray hair. He's old, so he's wearing glasses and fair skin, and he is on surveillance cameras, and he's gang stalking while the entity's flying over me by helicopter. So is Chevron, ARCO, the Ontario Veterinary Hospital, so is the Ontario Downtown Apartments, so is the entity that's gang stalking on the roads and the highways along Euclid Avenue, those demons that were stalking with impossible light this morning, which was, we're going on 3 hours ago now. 9C, KZ 432, that's another demon. P.O.C. This is an entity that doesn't know what else to do other than more of the same, and the federal government's going to help them out with that. Since you're so sick and you don't know how to stop torturing somebody, you don't know how to stop stalking them, you don't know how to stop harassing them, all you know to do is engage in more stalking and harassment and sexual violence. That's all you know how to do. Is so you resort to threatening when you're being exposed for conspiring somebody's murder. That's all you know how to do. Okay, well then that's again a threat to the public and yourself, and that's what's put in padded rooms, by the way. That's what's diagnosed and convicted, and that is acting as an entity. That's terrorism. Okay, that's the prosecution, and that's filling a population, by the way, that make that same engage in that same decision making, that same low bar for the absence of any reasoning. License 9EPV 157. Okay, and do so with impunity. Impunity. City of Ontario, demons. Using the trucks of the City of Ontario, lighting up with the engineer light. All they're doing is monitoring. They're demons. All right, it's P.O.C. And as you'll know, as you'll learn, it's not enough for demons to be fearful. Demons need to suffer the most severe consequences. So many of them are going to answer to Christ Jesus for what they've done in the spirit. That's not my business. That's between them. And you're going to witness it, though. When things are happening outside of a prosecution, you'll know why. You'll know why. These are demons that are practicing witchcraft, and they sacrifice human beings all the time, and they think that they have power, so you'll have hundreds of them engage in rituals together. They engage in the practice of voodoo and black magic. They do that together by the numbers. You know how many people have sacrificed themselves? Hundreds of people? Hundreds and hundreds of people. They've been targeting for years, and that's going to come back and circle back to them. That's between them and my Lord. I'm prosecuting. That's the part of the case he told me to handle, and that's all I'm going to do, but you're going to witness it, and it's not going to be a mystery why. And they're stalking in helicopters as well. They practice black magic. And I mean everybody. There's no respecter of persons. Okay, before Christ Jesus, there's no respecter of persons. I mean, when you see officials, when you see celebrities, when you see people of quote unquote status, so they claim, and just you're talking about just trying to put it as delicately as I can, but this is real life, but while they're bartering the life over someone else, but then you're supposed to be gentle when they lose their life. All I'm stating is that when you see these things happen, these are the demons that were engaged in betting against my life and doing so to Satan. And guess what? Satan can't touch me. He can't. And so what they sent out, they're going to answer for that. I'll just put it that way. And there are hundreds of people that share in that because they think Satan's technique is numbers. And that's not in the kingdom of God. That's not how it works. 26455U1. Okay? Christ is the majority. One. One. So you have a lot of people that are going to be dropping like flies. That's just the truth. And they're in office. They're celebrities. They're known of status. Just so that you know. In addition to the ordinary demons in the neighborhood, okay? This is P.O.C. It's 9 a.m. 8F63108. All of them engaging in the federal offense of stalking with impossible light. That's the engagement in psychological torture before murder. That's the entity engaging in that. I'm documenting cowards, okay? When the entity is aware that your phone is off, but I've captured it before, even flying away at a distance. But the moment I start recording, the helicopter activity is, I don't hear it now. But you already know the Ontario Police is stalking. 9CKZ432, and they're still stalking. But this is the people of the state engaged in monitoring. They're monitoring this evidence. The government's going to be prosecuted for keeping the evidence against itself under surveillance, in addition to the crime of surveillance in the first place. License 7BCL308. A bunch of little youngins looking like prepubescent little homosexuals who are raised up to think that it's cool to be a homosexual gang stalker. That's basically what these young folks out here are engaging in. It's pathetic and it's sad. And that's because they're demon-possessed, gang-stalking homosexual mothers living a whole life of conflict and hypocrisy, okay, are engaged in superficiality, are engaged in gang stalking, and then they raise up little demons that are engaging in the same. That's why she looks like she's 17 and a half, gang stalking me. 7ZPV439. And that's the harm and the public corruption that the government is teaching, incentivizing the masses, the population to engage in. And that's why Ontario Police is being disbanded. They are a harm to the public. They're engaging in what this is like. They're engaging in some sick iteration of the movie Purge. But this is real life. They're really doing that. You're being disbanded. This is like the most absurd criminal system that a corrupt police department could be found engaging in. And that's because they're engaged in a whole organization of people getting away with murdering somebody, a whole organization of people getting away with psychologically torturing someone, a whole organization where people get away with sexually violating them and doing it for the satiation of that police department as well, who are also demons and who are also obsessed with my vagina. 8RZK328, sharing in that. Psychopaths, same conduct. Impossible light activity is impossible. You have a population of demons repeating it over and 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 over again. They're demon possessed. Okay, it's P.O.C. and they are actually, as a whole population, stalking me. This is what is so, and then the demons are mad because you're embarrassed, you're ashamed. You're embarrassed for doing what you shouldn't have been doing in secret. What you need to know is that Christ Jesus is watching you, and he's the one that has the power to cast you into hell. And you're mad because the public knows that you're obsessed with my vagina, and you are. You are. So you're mad at the wrong person. You're a psychopath. That's why you're angry, while you're being a whole sex offender. You're talking about mental issues upon mental issues. And then that had the nerve to try to defame me. Absolutely, I'm going to drag you in the public forum. And not only expose how you are engaged in what is targeting me by defaming me, but it is insult that even something like you have the audacity to even refer to me or speak my name. These are the cockroaches of humanity. The audacity of them to try to defame me. These are animals. It's 9:05 a.m. These psychopaths are stalking with impossible light. Clowns that try to defame me. And this is what they do to people that don't have any voice. That's also why it's going to be an intense prosecution. Getting away with murdering people and murdering their reputation as well. And you're looking at them. They're barbarians. They're Neanderthals. It's disgusting. Okay? It's 9:05 a.m. And they're sitting around monitoring this podcast, which is going on the internet like it is every other day. Over 900 episodes. It's going on the internet like it is every other day. And all you're doing is giving me evidence, that proof that people need to know Satan is existing amongst millions of people. 35734C4, amongst millions of people. They're demon possessed. That's not some extreme anomaly, exceptional condition of a person. No, it's very common. The state of California is filled with demon possessed people. And they're engaged in what is terrorism, as gang stalking is going to be classified. This is gang violence on steroids, okay? It's 9:06 a.m. right, it's currently 9:16 a.m. and the images that you see of the third party, both the company Securitas and the chubby male that's wearing glasses and the Securitas uniform, is representing criminal presence in the path where the fake sun is following to the Ontario Town Square. It remained at the ARCO, and you're mindful of what it's doing every other morning when I'm here at this Ontario Town Square before 8 a.m. I'm here where the environment follows me, which is letting you know that a whole population is stalking, including the demons you'll see in images, sitting at the bench, walking by wearing a Securitas uniform, the demons that are the City of Ontario and Brightview, stalking with audible noise, and guess who follows in helicopter? The entity is, again, cowards that go silent when I start recording, how they're monitoring what I'm uploading to the internet. That's the podcast, which is still going up on the internet. The Ontario Police Department's pattern of stalking in my face, which is what Corporal Kemp and A. Morris are engaging in, while they are doing so under the guise of, oh, we're here securing the Ontario Town Square for the food festival, while they're engaging in the same pattern of conduct, replete with what is the fake sun setting at 6:03 p.m. at this same venue, where it is at 9:18 a.m. following me to this venue, and here yesterday at 7:15 in the morning, before 7:15, like 7:09 a.m., something like that. This is the entity that's keeping that fake sun, and the Ontario Police follow, flying over me in the parking lot where the airport is stalking. The entity that uses a plane to fly in the direction west and then make a U-turn flying over the downtown Ontario luxury apartments, all of them gang stalkers, and Sarah Regis is a gang stalker. And the entity is engaging in what is flying over that parking lot, and the Ontario Police fly over my head while a bunch of demons are circling all around me, stalking as I come to the Ontario Town Square. That's 9:09 to 9:11 a.m. And then the entity is again monitoring as I'm uploading the podcast. It's currently 9:18 a.m. From 9:14 and 9:15, the Ontario Police, like I've already captured on video dozens and dozens of times at this same venue, where the entity that's engaged in landscaping is gang stalking, the entity that's engaged in security is gang stalking, the entity that's engaged in banking, the Wells Fargo, is gang stalking, the entity that's engaged in living in relevant position, the elderly at 280 North Limit Apartments, the Ontario City Hall, the Paul Leon himself is gang stalking, the Ontario Fire Department, they're gang stalking, the Ontario Downtown Luxury Apartments, while I'm on the opposite side of that same building while I'm at ARCO, it's the same apartment complex on the opposite side, which is relevant to, again, 12:34 p.m., I'm at the same location. And at 6:45 p.m., I'm at the same location. And moreover, the Ontario Police fly over and fly in circles seeking to engage in harassment and torture and ongoing terrorism because I'm uploading the evidence, prosecuting it and prosecuting the state. That's audible noise under a fake sun, not landscaping. And this is the public corruption of the City of Ontario, the state of California. All right, it's currently 9:19 a.m. and the City of Ontario and Brightview is also engaged in federal stalking under Title 18 through the engagement of what is corrupt business practices, maintaining landscaping as a means of monitoring an American citizen with the police who are flying over my head. And that's also how you know that Brightview is nothing other than a bunch of demons that are gang stalking under a company name, because of the criminal conduct of the Ontario Police that are acting in concert with the people. It is currently 9:20 a.m. That's ongoing criminal acts of obstruction of justice where everyone, everything, every business is engaged in federal stalking. Just want to be clear, Tracy Banks that's gang stalking this morning, as I read her, state her name and her license plate, and she arrives on this same street where the fake sun's still over me, the fake sun that's still over my head at 12:34 p.m., and the fake sun that's still in alignment to me on the same street at the same address even, the Chevron and the ARCO, at 6:45 p.m., Tracy Banks is arriving pursuant to engagement in this pattern of conduct, still acting in furtherance of the conspiracy to murder me, her daughter, while she is gang stalking me in concert with the demons that I'm documenting on a daily basis, and including when she arrives in my path, conspicuously targeting me, while she is not engaging in what is the lawful return of that which she unlawfully dispossessed of me by defaming my character and acting like she's me, stealing my identity and going into courtrooms. Oh, the state of California that's gang stalking me, they knew very well that it wasn't me. They were not ignorant. They were engaging in a pattern of conduct of trying to steal from me together. That's why the government is stalking me by helicopter. That's why the government's engaged in kidnapping as well. And those that share in kidnapping, like demons of Brightview, they're the ones that engage in criminal summoning while they're monitoring you. They're going to prison. As simple as that. And so is Tracy Banks. And that's what you're mindful of. She's going to federal prison while her co-defendants following me down the street to the town square. And she engaged in summoning them to commit kidnapping while she's defaming my character in doing so. Just like the Ontario Police have been engaged in since 2019, defamation of character upon federal group stalking and monitoring and psychological torture. which is the intent to obstruct justice, so that when an American citizen tells the federal government that I'm being targeted by the state has stolen from me, the state has stolen my identity, the state has committed crimes against me, the state has unlawfully detained me, that you are not written off as somebody that's crazy and somebody that just suffered some random mysterious crime and you disappeared. It's the government that murdered you and hid your body. It's the government that kidnapped you and put you in a facility. It's the government that's engaged in stalking and monitoring you and torturing you. Okay? That's the Ontario police that are being disbanded, and it's stalking by a whole bunch of sex offenders. These are a bunch of boys stalking at the OVITT family community, stalking at the Ontario Town Square, sitting at the bench, riding their bike, trimming the bushels, sitting around, pacing all around, driving on the C Street turn circle, walking on or sitting on benches around. This is surveillance. They're doing so on behalf of the state. And you know that because a whole fake sun is right over me, where he's trimming the trees. It's audible noise and light activity and audible activity. This is the entity that's engaged in demonic conduct, that are stalking with light, sex offenders obsessed with my vagina, the demons that are obsessed with my vagina and threatening to harm me when they're engaged in trying to duck and dodge when I'm recording on my podcast. That's the entity that's going to harm me. That's the entity that's going to be prosecuted for terrorism in the United States. This is mental illness that a population shares, by the way. This is P.O.C. Meeting me while the fake son goes to the entrance of the library, stalking with the airport, stalking with the police department. This is a Latina female, a homosexual, a demon, 4UTL713, while Impossible Light moves across the apartment building, which is why they are stalking in the first place, stalking with light. That's terrorism by the city of Ontario. And you will see Brightview stalking the fake sun, you'll see, while the entity is stalking with commercial planes. And you're also mindful of the published schedule while Alan D. WAPNER is engaged in terrorism using commercial planes. That airport's being shut down. It's exposed and engaged in what is terrorism, as you are now aware of how the states are engaged in domestic terrorism in this country with the population. All right, the entity is doing so, flying over the Ontario Town Square with a fake sun. That's the whole environment that follows me, stalks me, that's demonic, while the population is stalking in that environment. This is 215 East C Street, the fake son over me, while that sex offender, that female, is a homosexual. They also engage in stalking me in the bathroom. All right, so while they're outside stalking under the fake sun with engineer light, that's what's in the bathroom also stalking. That's a sex offender, P.O.C. Okay, the ninja that you're looking at comes in to engage in terrorism and covers up her face while she knows that she's being documented for being both a homosexual, a stalker, and a demon. Doing so at station number 3, going to station number 2, stalking me with the, again, the same entity that brings in another harasser and then is documented removing the harasser when they're orchestrating harassment together. That's the entity that's demonic, stalking with the police, that comes inside, stalking me inside of the library, beating on the furniture. That's the psychopath that's stalking with light. That's the frustrated, sexually perverted minion that's obsessed with my genitalia and is engaged in what is monitoring on communication devices inside of the OVITT Family Community Library. Okay, particularly you'll see the psychopath covering up her whole face while she knows that she's engaged in gang stalking that's being documented. And this is criminal activity of the government. This is the type of psychopathic behavior, a sex offender that's coming and cloaking themselves like there's some sort of ninja while they're stalking in plain daylight under the fake sun. Every demon that's sitting station 578, station number 3, beating on the desk like a psychopath. That's the entity that's stalking me with impossible light under the fake sun that's still over the venue. Again, the OVITT Family Community Library is engaged in harassment. This is 215 EC Street. While the demon-possessed enter the library and are working at the library, all they're doing is gang stalking with the patrons who are all demons. That's P.O.C. You'll see this demon who's also documented monitoring my vagina in the bathroom as well. She's engaged in gang stalking and coming into the library purely focused on me. It's another homosexual. This is P.O.C.
Alright, what I'm about to show you is very demonic, and it's also malicious. This is what Satan does, and Satan doesn't think that you can tell or notice it. This is impossible light activity right on the wall where they have babies and parents and strollers and kids programs and the picture of the mayor and the Ontario City Council. And guess what they're all doing? Monitoring my vagina. This is impossible light activity amongst a room full of demons. They're also all walking in impossible light activity, and they all act like the environment isn't here, while they're all stalking on behalf of that same police department that you hear on my podcast, stalking me day and night using helicopters. This is the entity that's monitoring my vagina in the bathroom. This is the direct evidence because the sun that is outside, first of all, wouldn't still be there over the same address. And then you're looking at the engineered light where they're supposed to have the product of sunlight over the building. But then remember that fake sun is here both at 10 o'clock and 6 p.m. And they're sitting around walking as employees and patrons in engineered light monitoring. These are communication devices. So it's my phone. Walking around in the engineered environment, there's a shadow over here. Here's my shadow right here. And here's my shadow up right. They're monitoring. And these are demons that are monitoring. And it's no surprise that this is the venue that engaged in kidnapping, engaged in what is ongoing harassment, psychological torture, while monitoring the evidence and while with regard to the public investigation that I've been maintaining in the city of Ontario, the OVITT Family Community Library engaged in the unlawful and impermissible threat of interfering with it by excluding me from the venue based on discrimination, based on criminal surveillance, based on the intent to obstruct justice. And they're all a bunch of sex offenders. Those are all demons monitoring. Every single last one of them. This is P.O.C. and that's impossible light activity. And the more that you catch Satan, the more spectacular Satan shows you through stalking with light that he is here and that these are all demons. And guess how I use that to prosecute them? Because this is mental illness. This is psychopathic. And it's also sexually perverted and it's highly criminal. This is the entity and there's no reflection from the sun outside. That's also stalking with light. This is P.O.C. My vagina is under surveillance in here amongst the population that are monitoring outside as well. This is P.O.C. Criminal summoning by Ontario Fire Department at 6:51 p.m. coming from the Ontario Fire Department at B Street, where they've been gang stalking all day long while the fake sun remains at the OVITT Family Community Library, which I captured upon my exit at what is 6:40 p.m. The fake sun's still at the same entrance, 215 East C Street. That is the Ontario Fire Department engaged in federal stalking, doing so with the people of the state, including Starway, California number 0466573. The license plate is 13158B4. These are third-party gang stalkers, just like I captured at the food festival, monitoring while also performing. These are demons, by the way, who are singing on a stage, and they're engaged in demonic activity at the same time, which, in case you didn't know, many celebrities do this, and you participate in it unbeknownst to you, but it's demonic what they're engaging in, and they are literally monitoring while they are preparing for an event at the where the entity, the Ontario Town Square is a part of the entity where the entity keeps the fake sun all day. That's where they're engaging in a performance, and they're monitoring with the city of Ontario, with the Ontario Fire Department, and Starway is a corrupt business engaging in that, monitoring with the people of the state, including license 9LMK843 7JXH710. License 8YQW359, license 7X50476, I believe. And this is a third-party monitoring at the bus stop, pacing back and forth, keeping me under surveillance at the bus stop, and doing so with the Ontario Fire Department. That demon's image is captured. License 9NOK22552. YN187. This is the same entity monitoring all night long, removing my blanket so that they can look at my body while they stare at me and stalk and monitor and molest with light. Doing so while they are monitoring right now on what is Euclid 5WXE282, and Omnitrans is engaged in the pattern of conduct as well with the Ontario Police Department that's gang stalking right now by driving onto Transit, where the Ontario Museum of History and Arts is, crossing path with me and doing so stalking. License 9ERS976 is crossing path with me and stalking with the Ontario Police Department. This is how an entity is surrounding you. They're doing so while the fake sun is remaining at the OVITT, which again I captured in images. At the license plate, let me get this. 9NOK225 is monitoring gang stalking with minor children as well. These are sex offenders and pedophiles and psychopaths conspiring murder, and they are also in custody of children while they engage in that lifestyle of criminality with the state, which is the state of the, which is the current status of the entire state. That's corrupt. 9UBS892. The entity is maintaining light activity on Euclid Avenue as well,
maintaining flashing light, just like the demons of the Ontario Police Department. Providing what is light activity is 9U-BS 892 by sitting in the lane with the turn signal on while I'm capturing images. That's a demon that's monitoring my use of my communication device, including on the same street where the fake sun is rising this morning, like I documented in video. And on the same street, I captured the fake sun at 6:48 p.m. This demon is monitoring me. 9TQE 892, 8HER 278, 84418K3, 9TXY 887, 4UJV 722, and this is P.O.C. The entity is engaged in what is bathroom monitoring. The Ontario Police Department, as I'm showing you, license 9PSF 723. By my podcast that you heard, stalking by helicopter, is stalking right now while the people of the state are maintaining activities. On traffic cameras are demons at the traffic lights. Turning what is east onto Holt Boulevard, they're monitoring while the entity is sounding sirens. Stopped at the stop light, the red light at Holt to proceed south on Euclid Avenue, they're all gang stalking while the entity's sounding sirens, and they're doing so at the venues, the nightclub, the Verizon, the Bailey Spa, the Bally Spa, the Zolos Beauty Area, the T-Mobile, the MoneyGram. This is where the entity's gang stalking, okay? This is P.O.C. It's currently 6:55 p.m. This is the population that's been engaged in monitoring the inside of the Ontario OVITT Family Community Library. 9KMM 169, 8PQF 461, 38204G3. This is relevant to the public corruption that the City of Ontario is engaging in with the people of the state. These are demons that are currently engaged in criminal activity, federal stalking, and furtherance of murder, and they're engaging in that while the entity that is targeting me is monitoring the evidence, meaning everything that I upload, they're keeping it under surveillance, and they're still acting in furtherance of trying to murder me while they're gang stalking, because that's why they're monitoring in the first place, and they're still engaging in that. The entity, the City of Ontario's use of sirens is criminal. The entity's use of its fire department vehicles and ambulances and police vehicles are criminal, and the entity's use of the helicopter, which is the hallmark of gang stalking in California under the fake sun, it's criminal, and they're engaging in that with the people of the state. It is currently 6:56 p.m. Omnitrans is again the bus stop. What is published on with regard to the use of the bus stop, the arrivals of the bus, the entity is targeting with regard to arrivals and non-arrivals. I've documented Omnitrans targeting me, and I'm also documenting them when they're targeting by keeping the fake sun. They also target by not arriving on time or not arriving at all while they are monitoring with the people of the state, okay? It's currently 6:57 p.m. P.O.C. All right, this is a demon that's monitoring me. He's pacing back and forth, and the entity is monitoring me while they keep a demon right next to me at the bus stop. The use of music is audible activity, and he is pacing. This is P.O.C. These are the sex offenders that also monitor my vagina, by the way. All right, the entity, as you saw inside of the library today, that demon that was standing in front of me, he blocks my path staring at his phone. And you'll see the demons that began walking in the library one after another after another. And then I'll show you the proof that they're demons. The fake sun remained over the library roof like I captured. The engineer light is on the wall inside of that library above the staircase. And I showed you what was engineered light on the wall inside of the library just manifesting out of nowhere. And that was creating my shadow. Those are indeed demons, and they're engaging in what is, I've been documenting, this is why I started documenting the people of the state, and this is how I knew that they were targeting as a population, because psychopaths that are demon-possessed, they tend to block my path, and they just stare down at their phone while they stand in front of me, and they also engage in pacing all around me. Those are demon-possessed people, and this is speaking to the focus of their communication devices while they're stalking. And so is 64574V2, 5MZV759, and you'll see the two demon-possessed sex offenders of the male gender who monitor my vagina as well, pursuant to sexual violence that the government encourages, shares in, and incentivizes while they're gaining what is ongoing documentation that I'm capturing, and they do so in furtherance of murder. This is the government that is engaged in sponsored murder while males are stalking you, okay? And this is a psychopath that comes in and stalks. You'll see him staring at his phone. This is what the demons are always doing. This is what the demon was doing inside of the library, and they're doing it in the specific environment. 8ATC331 is aiding in the specific environment while they're stalking on the roads and the highways.
which is engineered light. Remember, they're molesting my breaths while they're on the opposite side of the street. These are demons. 8YJA850. None of their headlights are that bright, okay? But when they're, again, stalking with impossible light, 8X40A65, that's a paper plate on a Jetta. These are demons that are stalking, monitoring, okay? Impossible light remains. And these are demons that you'll see surrounding me, and this is serving for what is prosecution of the government for surrounding you with sex offenders. That's a threat to, and a threat to your safety and your life. And that's inherent to the prosecution for terrorism. It's 7 p.m. P.O.C. (7MPC098 03847772 8SPE 746 7PFC 374 9KLB 679. And I want to be clear, the entity is engaged in what is homosexual violence, okay? Not only are these homosexual females that are stalking me and obsessed with me and obsessed with my genitalia, this is shared by the demon-possessed that are of the male gender as well. And I want to be clear, the entity is engaged in what is stalking with boys because I've been documenting the homosexual females that are stalking me, and it's equally predatory. I'm just pointing out the obvious to you, as all of their girlfriends, all of their wives are homosexuals that are obsessed with my vagina. Okay, and so it's not better. It's speaking to what the entity, while they're monitoring, and all the homosexual women who are embarrassed for being exposed as such, for being obsessed with another woman, for stalking a woman they don't know, and for also being sexually obsessed with her while trying to live their lives as though they're heterosexual. These are the demons that are engaged in everything that they do, and the way that they do it is based on my criticism of the intellectually impotent, demon-possessed entity that is gang stalking, engaging in terrorism. Females are equally predatory, they're equally perverted, and they're equally obsessed with my vagina. And sending boys to come stalk me is equally a threat as well. P.O.C. I just want to point that out. P.O.C. These are demons stalking at Hope Boulevard and Euclid Avenue, revving the motorcycle with simultaneity to my movement. Those are demons. Okay, and those are the cowards that engage in that while I'm documenting the people of the state by the masses, like on the street. When I say things that are triggering, these are the demons that use that means of amplification. The entity is, and I think that it's laughable when demons are pacing around me and then they laugh when I'm documenting their psychopathic behavior while they're monitoring my vagina. I think that that's funny as well. The entity is engaging in at 7:07 p.m. and they are stalking. These are the people of the state that are stalking in impossible light, which is also funny, but laughing at the mentally ill is perhaps considered cruel. But these are demons who are mentally sick that are engaged in the conspiracy to commit murder while they stalk with noise and they stalk with light, and they all stalk under a fake sun. And that's something that all of you can laugh about. That's audible activity, relevant positioning, and light activity. That's the entity on the roads and the highways. That's the prosecution of the government. Okay? This is the entity doing that under the fake sun. The entity is doing that right now, while the entity, including Omnitrans, is monitoring. And that's amplification. Okay, looking at a motorcycle, in the same way when you're looking at the helicopter, it's the amplification. These are demons. All right, that's POC. But I do think it's laughable when demons are stalking under a fake sun, going in circles around me. They're laughing at themselves. This is POC at 7:07 p.m. All right, Omnitrans did arrive. I am indeed being monitored on the bus, but I am confirming that Omnitrans arrived. It's 7:12 p.m. This is POC. All right, it's 7:47 p.m. Meeting me in order to molest with light. It's a homosexual woman with a male and the passenger, 8XBK861. It's a white Honda Accord. This is POC at the third-party facilitated venue Amazon, where I've heavily documented. So I'm absolutely being monitored inside of the Amazon, and the entity engaging what is aiming light and doing so pursuant to what is maintaining light while you're being monitored. As I've shown you, a bunch of demons are monitoring me while they keep a fake sun over me and stalk me obsessively. And the objective is stalking with light. And you see them, I'm showing you all the iterations of that conduct, and it's psychopathic. 8KCA588 6852594. And a demon that's monitoring me at a distance knows exactly who I am, where I'm located, and is also engaged in stalking, 8RHT820, with the rest of the people of the state. 6B70. I can't really see that one. But while they stalk with light, they're monitoring with everybody else. 8IDE or 8TDF349. It's facilitation, and it's a federal case for, by default, for gang stalking and furtherance of murder, and it's also facilitation of gang stalking. When you're engaging in elements of monitoring, they're acting as a team. The demons are acting as a team. So while you create light activity, everybody else that's present is monitoring to that light activity. While you're present, everybody else is engaged in presence and light activity and audible noise. While you create noise, everybody else is this is like double dutch for demons, but they're monitoring. 6SYS959, 7EDZ541, 8WNN151 is a sex offender molesting me. And again, these are demons that are, everything that they're doing is based on me. They wait to drive out of the drive-thru and so they can touch my buttocks with light. They wait till I walk out so they can pull up into the parking space to touch my thighs with light. They are aiming light through the store windows to aim it perfectly through the aisle that I'm walking down. These are demons. They are demons. Okay, and demons know exactly where you're at. They know exactly what you're doing. And demons are also people who are mentally ill. 6PXE304, 8LBS404, 8DZV893. And it's 7:50 p.m. in the city of Upland. And I guarantee you I will be back to refresh my documentation in Upland, California. This is P.O.C. It's a homosexual, license 7LSR826, molesting with Cane's Chicken. Cane's Chicken is sharing, and that's sex offense. Remember, the businesses and the patrons together think that you don't know that they're monitoring you. And they are. And you're also I'm going to prosecute businesses as terrorists. I'm going to prosecute businesses as sex offenders. It's P.O.C. 7:51 p.m. All right, documenting sex offenders. License plate 8LXR937, molesting me with light. 9BQD959, 8AQL658, 53081U3. CR021, that's a handicap. 7SHS944, 9DLK376. Okay, while they're co-defendants, while the band of demons are surrounding with light, you are all engaged in sex offense, and so you can go right next door to the sex offender's neighbor and document them. Those are the pitfalls, and that's also the ability to prosecute and not miss anybody. And remember, you don't have to do this. I'm doing this because I'm detailed in my documentation. I'm maintaining a public investigation. I'm establishing precedent. I'm showing all the ways in which you can prosecute when it's a criminal conspiracy by the government and the people. And I also find it it's not that I just find it, but it is crucial to openly shame sex offenders and stalkers and murderers and corrupt actors, demons that are in positions of authority and influence, and I'm going to expose them. I already have. All right, it's currently 7:53 p.m. This is P.O.C. All right, well, you will see, you will recognize the pattern. The objective of the demon possessed that are keeping you under surveillance. It is to stalk in your path, to be in alignment to you with a method of light activity. That is accomplished massively while a fake sun remains over you. And that's going to remain over you while population is monitoring all day long. 352-173, but it's also obvious that it's not the natural environment when you document that, when you observe it. All right, and stalking with a method of light activity, not coincidentally in perfect alignment with the bus stop that all the demons that are monitoring anticipate me to go sit down and wait for the gang stalker Omnitrans to return. And he's engaged in the un-American conduct of corrupt business practices, engaged in criminal activity while serving another demon-possessed gang stalker in relevant position. Has an American flag in the back of this vehicle. License 48940C3. And this is the documented third-party Golden Bear. I've documented these demons before. 5025 State Street, number 7 in Montclair, California. They are not coincidentally, they are pursuant to the pattern of conduct, aiming light and also maintaining peculiarized light, like the demons of the city of Ontario, like the demons of Graffiti Protective Company, the demons of the, literally the municipality. When they start sounding their sirens, they're stalking with light. And you know that, and that's very embarrassing for a government to be shown engaged in doing nothing other than what is psychopathic and demonic, and that's what they're doing, using It's very sad when you're using a fire truck to engage in not only criminal but demonic act, and that's what Michael Gerken has going on. He's going to be removed from the position. He stole from somebody that's not a demon-possessed, Satan-serving psychopath that secretly worships the genitalia of a woman that would never voluntarily permit him to have any information about it. But that's the fire department, that's the police department. This demon is opening and closing the doors of the vehicle as audible activity while I'm using my device, okay? This is country. Uptown and Country Shopping Center, very heavily documented. They're doing nothing other than gang stalking. Sex offenders are engaged in stalking with light, okay? That's what demons do. Demons stalk with light. Demons follow with light. Demons maintain light. And what you also pay attention about that light is that it's impossible light activity. It's unnatural when you pay attention to it. And it's happening in ways such as when you stand under an artificial light, a light bulb, like you can buy one from Walmart, an artificial light is not going to create 3 shadows on the ground in front of you. This is, again, the entity that's maintaining an illusion. You see the light, you're not even paying attention to the environment, okay? But that artificial light, that's being used in the engineered, in this demonic environment, okay? This is the entity that's engaging in that. Oh, yay, Omnitrans is returning. They probably want me right back in Ontario sooner than later. But I've documented Uptown and Country, and they're engaged in the pattern of conduct, very, very heavily documented. Okay, fake sunrise and set. Yes, I've documented it, okay? Including at this intersection, literally. So this is the P.O.C, just documenting that. It is the P.O.C. It is the pattern of stalking with light, which is the P.O.C. I've shown you iterations, the fake sun documentation showing that these are demons and that I am under surveillance by demons who also happen to make up the government, hence public corruption. And also, I mean, there is an unprecedented basis to re-examine the Constitution, seeing what the government has done to it, what's actually happened versus what's supposed to be happening versus what we are entitled to happen, okay, how we're protected as American citizens, those of us that are not demons that are monitoring American citizens. I'm not talking to the demons. I'm talking to those of us who are finding out that we are under surveillance, okay? The entities engaging in this, and it is revealing a pattern of conduct, including the fake sun, including the engineer light at nightfall. You're understanding the pattern, and the objective is monitoring, okay? And it affects the use of devices, and it's also combined with the use of technology. All right, it's 8:01 p.m. This is P.O.C. The bus has arrived. All right, the city of Upland engaging in the sex offense of molestation by the population, gang stalking me, all right? And I've documented Upland before, but this is documentation of that city while I'm there, engaged in the perpetual sex offense by the masses, all right? I'm sitting at the bus stop at the Uptown and Country, and your headlights from Foothill and Euclid Avenue are not going to touch me. And every demon that drives through the engineered light, it's creating a flashing of light analogous to, similar to, use of hazard lights, okay? They're creating light activity while demons are just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And these are demons that are doing so while they're obsessing over you, aiming light on you, monitoring you. Very demonic, very psychologically harmful, and it's also sexually motivated, sexually perverted, molesting. They want to touch, they want to follow you around, and they want to aim light all over you and your body. This is the city of Upland engaging in a sex offense license 6BKR 808, 8CED 340. Again, 8CED 340 is correct, yeah. 9UCT 421. These are all sex offenders. 7HGE 958 and 6WEX 249, 7HHA 540, 4UYR. Can't really see the rest of that. I would say 859, but you can scratch that. EG 14B4. Yeah, I can't see that one. It's paper. 72467W2. All right, it's 8:12 p.m. This is, again, documentation of the city of Ontario. The mayor is engaged in criminal monitoring, and this is a prosecution of that entity. The city of Ontario is engaged in a sex offense upon keeping me under surveillance, and this is the documentation as I go from city to city. It's a sex offense for the city to engage in monitoring you. It's a sex offense while the people of the state in that city are monitoring you, and this is the entity that's going to be prosecuted as a sex offender and as a terrorist, and you have a constitutional human right to not be sexually violated. The entity is engaged in criminal summoning, so I'm going to go ahead and document. Upland Police are not brand new to the P.O.C. They went to the city of Ontario under the fake sun, and they're monitoring right now. Vehicle 202,
License 1697. I can't really see that, but 1591718 and 1661755. License vehicle 215. Hold on. Let me see if I'm capturing images. I am capturing images, but the glare is what you'll see. But you can see, yeah, you can see Upland Police. They're engaged in criminal summoning. Upland Police are sex offenders, and they're engaged in kidnapping with the intent to obstruct justice from the Upland Public Library. That is the basis of disbanding. And the documentation, even as of 2025, is showing that they are still engaging in the pattern of conduct with impunity. And this is relevant to kidnapping me upon gang stalking me and doing so with the intent to obstruct justice, which is a basis to disband that little peon. It's a pissant of a police department. Forgive me for that, but they are a little nobody, and they're only engaged in criminal activity, and so this is the basis to disband them. And the United States, the population security period, the betterment of society is benefited by the removal of such a small little, because I documented the Ontario, excuse me, not the Ontario Police, but I did document the Ontario Police, but the Upland Police Department, they have a small little corner of a police station where the entity had the fake sun over me. There are a bunch of demons that are gang stalking. And the country would be much better off without the Upland Police Department, who are clearly devoted to criminal activity and greeting me in the city of Upland, because it's about me in the specific environment. That's why the fake sun is over me in the city of Upland. My documentation is already on the internet showing you exactly what I'm talking about. The fake sun is never going, well, the fake sun will, but the sun will never be through the roof of the Upland Public Library, where I'm showing you it's rising and setting on Euclid Avenue, where the Ontario police are stalking me day and night in helicopters. And this is, again, putting the Ontario police versus the criminal activity, clearly identified criminal activity of the Upland Police Department. And both of them disbanded for kidnapping. Okay, so I just want to be clear on that. The prosecution of the city of Upland is already complete, including while the imbeciles of the city of Ontario have been engaged in the ongoing pattern of conduct in the face of the weight of the evidence. Not just evidence, but the weight of the evidence. All right, it's currently 8:15 p.m. That's impunity by the city of Upland, and the city of Upland is going to be prosecuted for a sex offense, which is gang stalking. P.O.C. All right, Gloria's Cochinas, 401 North Euclid Avenue. ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue. Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue. The UNICARE at 437 North Euclid Avenue. These are third-party facilitating venues sharing in the sex offense. They're all molesting. And this is, again, the city of Ontario that's engaged in the perpetual sex offense. That's what I'm documenting in the morning when they're driving on the street and the shadow of their vehicles are reaching all the way over to touch all over me. That's a method of touching with light. And the same way that you're looking at the engineer light that's molesting my breasts while they're driving across the street. License 9JPR201 is stalking in the path, is a sex offender molesting as a population, doing so while gang stalking with Gloria's Cochinas at 401 North Euclid Avenue. That's, again, the corruption of every business that's gang stalking and facilitating gang stalking. License 5L20940. This is the same population of demons that want to look at my body while they're stalking and molesting with light. That's a sex offender, as are all of them. And so is the business Gloria's Cochinas, so is the business ARCO, so is the business Starbucks. 8KFV834. And it's currently, by the way, 8:27 p.m. The U.S. Bank, located at 333 North Euclid Avenue. It's a sex offender. They're engaged in gang stalking. The people of the state use it 24 hours a day to engage in criminal monitoring. And there's sex offenders engaging in that, and so is U.S. Bank. 9RZY088, 9TLW600. And it's 8:27 p.m. That demon, whose license plate, I'm going to recite it again. I'm going to tell you what he's doing. He's stalking with light just like the tow truck, 9JPR201. He's stalking with a peculiarized light in the environment where I'm using my device, in the environment where I'm at, where I'm going to remain, like at the bus stop. That's what that demon was doing. And it's just a coincidence. No, it's the P.O.C. that somebody's in need of tow truck services. That's the form for having a method of light activity. Coincidentally, no, pursuant to the pattern of conduct, in alignment to where I'm going to sit to wait for the bus. Where the entity's engaged in what is stalking me is still at a distance from the intersection of Foothill and Euclid, where sex offenders are going out of their way to reach to touch on my body with light. And these are demons that are engaging what is documented as a mass sex act committed against the targeted individual's consent while you're stalking.
And it's a sex act committed by psychopaths and sex offenders who are doing so for a criminal purpose. While the entity is engaged in ongoing molestation and chasing you down and stalking you with light, it's a sex act committed by the government without your consent. Okay, and that's literally the government that's engaged in a sex offense. And while you're stalking in planes and helicopters and police vehicles, and it's going to be prosecuted as exactly what they do, as exactly what they are. All right, so it's currently 8:29 p.m. and I am uploading onto the ARCO Wi-Fi, and this is where the entity is maintaining light activity. Going into Gloria's to pick up your food to come back out, or going to Gloria's to pick up food to deliver Grubhub to somebody. It doesn't matter what they claim they're doing. It's always the pattern of conduct, however. They always engage in the ability to touch me with impossible light activity. They're always in the path with the method of peculiarized light. They're doing so everything under the fake sun. They're doing so while multiple shadows surround my person. This is public corruption. These are demons that are maintaining a whole alternate universe where you don't know, but now you know that demons are real. Satan surrounds through people, and you can deduce from the environment that's supernatural, and you know their character. They're violent sex offenders. They engage in criminal activity with the government, so they're walking around without any criminal records, as though there's some difference between one that doesn't have a criminal record and that does have a criminal record. That's an illusion. And they're engaged in sexual violence as a population. Okay, it's 8:30 p.m. These are demons stalking together with light, stalking together as a population. That's surveillance. Relevant positioning is what it's called. And stalking with ongoing audible activity. Okay, noise amongst engineered light and presence is how you are monitoring. This is why they engage in noise at the sudden movement. This is why they create light activity at the sudden movement. Light will manifest out of nowhere with regard to your most minute movement, or somebody will arrive out of nowhere, popped up out of nowhere. No one was there, but all of a sudden somebody appears out of nowhere. That's called relevant positioning. That's monitoring conduct. And it's happening in the engineered light. That's how they engage in all three of those elements. The entity is engaged in monitoring while they're maintaining all three elements all day long. This is traffic all night long on Euclid Avenue. Nobody's ever asleep. Nobody's ever, the neighborhood traffic never dies down on Euclid Avenue. The traffic is heavy on it because they're stalking me. Okay? That's P.O.C. It's 8:31 p.m. ARCO molesting with the sex offender, license 9RJT577 at 8:33 p.m. Molesting my genitalia area while impossible light is touching all over me while she is stalking. That's another homosexual. And it's also a psychopath because engineered light is not even naturally occurring. That's a demon in a woman's body who is stalking another woman and is lusting after touching her. That's a homosexual. And it's a form of sexual violence as well. And it's government action. And ARCO is sharing in that. ARCO's engaged in a sex offense, and ARCO's engaged in a sex offense by the masses. Okay? That's P.O.C. It's 8:33 p.m. at 434 North Euclid Avenue. They're engaged in a sex offense with the entity. You have another sex offender lined up to commit the same thing. That's amplified noise while they're listening to me document them. Those are psychopaths. The impossible light, psychopaths. The amplified noise, psychopaths. All right, that's P.O.C. I can't really see her license plate. Yeah, I can't really see her license plate. You can scratch that. It is currently, by the way, 8:34 p.m. 78TY335. The entity is engaged in harassment, but again, this is not ordinary harassment. This is harassment by a government that's keeping you under surveillance. So the entity that's stalking you with amplified noise because of hostility to what you're documenting at that, it's relevant to prison, damages, it's relevant to that prosecution, charges, it's relevant to all of the above. The people of the state are the demons, the terrorists that are going to be prosecuted. They're going to be in court. They're going to be prosecuted for terrorism in the United States. They're going to be deported, etc. The impunity of the entity is the impunity of the entirety of that entity, including the immigrant population. This is the entity that's going to want mercy. Oh, can we? No, you cannot. None of the above. You're getting deported. You're being prosecuted. You're being identified as terrorists. And this documented impunity is directly informing that policy. This is why. You saw the entire time the entities engaging in what is conduct, speaking to obstructing justice while they are the ones that are on the wrong side of the law. They're the ones engaged in harassment while you're enforcing your rights. They're the ones that are hostile while you do that because they want to sexually violate you and are angry when you speak out about it, when you document, because I'm not just vocalizing because I feel like it, I'm prosecuting. So the entity also has a tremendous amount of disregard and disrespect for the federal government, and they're going to learn about that as well. All right. It's currently 8:35 p.m. This is the entity that's, again, creating its own consequences, okay? They are reaping what is an intense federal prosecution for a population. They're reaping that. It is currently 8:35 p.m. This is P.O.C. All right, downtown Ontario luxury apartments and the Ontario police stalking together, molesting with impossible light activity. The Ontario police are gang stalking. They're flying south over 434 North Euclid Avenue, while the sex offenders are gang stalking. While they're gang stalking by driving on what is D Street onto Euclid, where they're molesting with light, like you saw in the video last night. That's the sex offense that the Ontario police is committing. The Ontario police is the city of Ontario. That's the state of California engaging in the sex offense. And this is a sex act committed by demons or psychopaths that are engaging in it for a criminal purpose of surveillance. And they engage in this sex act against the consent, against the will of, a non-willing participant of their sex act, while they're all engaging in that to surveil me, and they're doing it while you are literally exposing, hey, they're sexually violating me, and they keep sexually violating me. The entity engages in more sexual violence, and so does the police department, okay? I captured images. I'll upload that to the Google Drive. It's currently 8:48 p.m. Downtown Ontario Luxury Apartments is located at 320 North Euclid Avenue in Ontario, California. That's Sarah's Regis that's engaging in a sex offense. All right, doing so at 8:48 p.m. I'll just show you. That's a demon crossing path, driving south. That's an entity. All right, that's a demon-possessed one, and that's a psychopath. 9HLA405 is a sex offender molesting me with impossible light activity. This is P.O.C. It's 8:49 p.m. It's 9:20 p.m. The entity that is monitoring, that's the entity that's a sex offender molesting me with light, both stalking me and also trying to stop while they're actively conspiring murder and stalking. They're interfering with internet in order to stop their sexual violence and conspiracy to commit murder, i.e. gang stalking, from being published online. That is, again, the bloodthirsty murderers who are the people of the state of California. Okay, this is the city of Ontario. It's the ARCO Wi-Fi, just interfering with the Wi-Fi on the surveillance cameras. You'll see a white pickup truck. Excuse me, not a pickup truck, a white van. They've been engaged in stalking. This is what the entity is doing while they're engaged in surveillance at the gas pumps. They're not consumers. They're third parties. And they're engaged in surveillance, monitoring on the video of the internet, and they're on surveillance cameras. It's 9:21 p.m. at 434 North Euclid Avenue. 506 North Euclid Avenue, which is Chevron. I'm identifying ARCO because that's the Wi-Fi network that I'm using, where the network is just disappearing while they're trying to stop me from documenting. So I'll go ahead and include it on this podcast, and I will type it in the podcast description for prosecution. All right, this third party in this white van, it is the license plate 93639X3, and it is engaged in federal stalking under Title 18, interfering with internet connectivity and doing so while stalking as well, gang stalking, in furtherance of murder. And interfering with the internet connection where prosecution is necessarily published on the video of the internet in front of everyone for the public knowledge of the rest of the country, for national security purposes, for your protection, for your knowledge, because you do need to know what the government is doing to American citizens, because if it's doing it to someone else, it could be you. All right, it's someone else that's going through that. It's necessary public information. It is newsworthy. It's something that is vital, and it's something that is real-time documentation pursuant to an American citizen's life. You are also acting in furtherance of the conspiracy to murder. So I just want to document that, and that's the third party that was gang stalking in concert with the demons. A blue van and a white vehicle. Those are demons. The entity is maintaining a population at ARCO. This is the P.O.C. So ARCO was the people of the state, and all the demons engaging in surveillance by putting gas in their cars, which is stalking in the path. Relevant positioning, light activity, ongoing audible activity, P.O.C. Okay, so the entity maintains the sound of a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the environment, while there are demons in engineered light stalking in my path, going by the name of ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue. All right, it is 9:23 p.m. P.O.C. Okay, the entity gang stalking at Uptown and Country. Uptown and Country is located at, let me get this address right here. Uptown and Country is located at 60 through 160, so that's 60 through 160 West Foothill Boulevard in Upland, California, 91786, and 913 through 917 North Euclid Avenue in Upland, California, 91786. The entity gang stalking me at the Upland Village Center, located at 121 East Foothill Boulevard in Upland, California, 91786. And the entity is gang stalking through all of the city of Upland, okay? I'm documenting where am I? What facilitating video am I at, pursuant to identifying everybody around in relevant position, in the zone of relevant positioning with regard to the massive monitoring that where criminal activity is underway, a sex offense is underway by a government and by a people. That includes companies, okay? So Upland Village Center represents many defendants representing the people of the state, okay? So Raising Cane's, McDonald's across the street, and I've documented all these venues, by the way. I documented Upland Village. I documented the Uptown and Country. I have the fake sun over me in the morning until the evening, and I'm laughing because the documentation is so complete already. And the entity is interfering with the Wi-Fi because it is delusional regarding stopping anything. What the entity is doing is accelerating what our federal policies to be created to deal with this very issue, because American citizens will not be caught living in a bubble, and the states that want to murder American citizens, trying to keep them from being able to speak out and identify and reach out for help and expose where the government is trying to conceal murder, organized murder, and organized kidnapping by the government that's gang stalking it as demons. And this is exactly what the demon possessed are engaged in. They want to murder, and they want to murder in secret. They want to sexually violate, and they want to sexually violate like demons that are gang raping one American citizen, and they want to do it in secret. Okay, and this is speaking to policies that are going to be surrounded regarding corrupt governments like the city of Ontario, all right, that are engaged in that pattern of conduct of obstruction of justice. And there are psychopaths even in doing that. Psychopaths for the P.O.C., psychopaths for the P.O.C. of seeking to obstruct justice. You want to be a stalker, and then you want to stop someone from telling everybody that you are a stalker. Okay, that is a very specific type of psychopath. That's a population of them. Those are the demon possessed that are gang stalking. That is the disorder that you're dealing with. Okay, it's 9:28 p.m. P.O.C. Okay, I do want to document while the entity is interfering with the internet connectivity, the third-party license plate with the white van that I already read is engaged in federal stalking, and is doing so with the people of the state. But I want to document the government engaging in what is removing the podcast from the published state into the draft state, which is removing it from the RSS feed to be accessed. I want to document that's, again, monitoring on the internet. That's the entity that's engaged in surveillance. That's the entity that is engaged in real-time manipulation of my evidence, they're in my account. The government doesn't have a warrant to engage in any of this. The government's doing it while they are monitoring evidence in an ongoing public investigation in order to prosecute for surveillance that the government is committing in furtherance of murder. And the government is engaged in what is changing my published podcast for September 16, 2025 into a draft state. The entity's doing that with the intent to obstruct justice, by the way. They're doing that while I was documenting. That is what was done. That's what's changed since I documented the entity interfering with the ARCO Wi-Fi, my ability to access it. So upon restoring access, and again, once I started recording the podcast, that white van drives off the property, crosses paths with me, and I document that license plate. And when I review my podcast, the podcast is changed from published to draft. And I confirm that by selecting by going into the link. This is what they're doing at ARCO. This is what they're doing. All they're doing is monitoring. They're on the video of the internet. So just want to document that. I did not unpublish, and I would not unpublish my podcast. I never do that. The entity is the one that goes onto YouTube and tries to make it private because they are embarrassed while they're being exposed and prosecuted. And then they also engage in the stupidity of stalking me for 11 minutes by helicopter, but then you don't want it on the internet. This is the entity that's, they're going to be committed. Okay, but this is the entity that commits that criminal activity. But the entity is engaged in a federal stalking, and this is changing my podcast from published to draft. All right, and the entity is acting through that third party that is driving that white van that's at the ARCO. Okay, doing so again while I am engaged in editing my podcast as well. in order for me to edit my podcast, I'm not changing it to reverting it to a draft. You don't have to do that. And the entity is doing so with the intent to obstruct justice. And fortunately, when you publish it, it doesn't just erase and disappear. This is it's so pathetic what I am. It's so pathetic. It is so pathetic. These are demons. Like I said, they're scared. They're very, very scared. But the entity this is something that is informing policy. This is something that is a threat to American citizens. When psychopaths and violent sex offenders suffering from this mental illness, when they are even fearful, they commit more acts of violence. That's what you need to know. That's what you gain from that. They will, out of fear, go home and gain as many weapons as they can and go shoot up a public venue, okay? That's what they do when they're fearful. This mental illness inflicts more harm to others. They are a threat to the public, okay? Exhibit A, okay? That's psychological torture. That's inflicting more harm while you are fearful. And there is nothing helpful to Alan D. Wapner because there are no flights published from the airport regarding 9:39 p.m. and it certainly isn't going to include hovering over. And also, not only hovering over, it's not a coincidence when I'm talking about what I'm talking about, and the entity begins stalking in a plane. That's the entity that is always engaging in activity creation when I state anything that is triggering. They are demons that are very fearful. Demon-possessed people, by the way, the demons that are in them, they're very timid. Demons are very, very timid spirits, but they act in groups, and this is where they get confidence and motivation from each other. That's why you have, groups of demons and group stalking. Demons don't act individually. They act as a group. Okay, and they also, from that, derive, which is inherently weak, they derive a false illusion of strength from numerosity. And what it is it is an epic prosecution. That's what it is. Okay, but nonetheless, that's the entity that's stalking. It's Ontario National Airport, which is a terrorist. Okay, and Ontario National Airport is also a sex offender. While I am subject to a sex offense and you're sharing in the elements of monitoring, meaning one of the co-defendants is molesting my breast with impossible light and you're stalking in the path, you're being prosecuted for the same sex offense. They're co-defendants. That's why you're being prosecuted as a sex offender, ARCO, while sex offenders are filling up their gas tanks and then molesting me with impossible light activity while you are making money. So be prepared. They're headquartered in La Palma, and this is inherent to being a corrupt company in the state of California that is engaged in criminal surveillance with companies like ARCO that are keeping American citizens under surveillance through its employees, through the presence of its venues, and through its patrons, which is concerted and intentional. Okay, it's public corruption that ARCO is engaged in. It's 9:40 p.m. and as I document ARCO is inflicting more sexual harm and psychological torture while I'm being molested with impossible light in an impossible manner. Demons that are driving onto the venue right now at 9:41 p.m. A white vehicle that's driving closest to the ARCO storefront is engaged in what is molesting me with impossible light as well. All right, anyway, it's currently 9:41 p.m. These are sex offenders, okay? In case you did not know, sex offenders get married and shack up and live. They post on social media like there's something noble or admirable or influential about them, and they're not. The demons in California call themselves celebrities, and they hold office, and the demons are engaged in sexual violence. They are mentally ill, and they're stalkers and thieves. Okay, they are absolutely the worst of the worst. They're cockroaches in the spirit. Okay, they're disgusting creatures, and this is the people of the state and the government itself that are all demon possessed. And amongst the demon possessed are people in positions whose name you know, by the way, and they're despicable creatures. They're demons. And so that's why I'm stating there's nothing impressive about demons whatsoever. I'm documenting them. And there's no difference, by the way, from demons that stand on a stage and sell millions of tickets for a concert versus these demons that are gang stalking on E Street and Euclid. There's no difference at all. They are the same condition. Hell-bound, sex-offending psychopaths stalking me and monitoring my vagina. Okay? It's currently 9:42 p.m. This is P.O.C. It is federal stalking turning my podcast. This is criminal activity I'm going to prosecute the government for. This is the government that's conspiring to murder me and desperately trying and failing at trying to conceal that. The federal government is going to prosecute this. The federal government is going to prosecute for obstruction of justice upon terrorism. which the government committed through millions of people. And it's a serious issue because the state of California poses a threat, literally a security threat, because roaming around are psychopaths that are trying to present as normal, and the evidence shows that these are murderers, serial killers, and violent sex offenders and criminals that have been so for a very long time. And the pattern of conduct, the prosecution of the state of California, is the only reason why everyone will know about it now. It's currently 9:43 p.m. This is P.O.C.